Chapter 550. It didn't take long for the international call to go through. Since it was lunchtime in Huaxia, Yang Qing didn't think that Anxin would go to bed early. Sure enough, the call was picked up after 2 rings. Anxin's gentle voice came through, and she said with a hint of surprise, "Hubby, why did you suddenly call me? I didn't have this habit before. Did you miss me? You didn't call me when you were in trouble, so I could only call you." Yang Qing was a little unhappy. It was embarrassing that his woman was in trouble, but he only found out about it through his friend. Anxin fell silent. After a long silence, she said faintly, "I thought I would be able to settle the matter by the time you came back, so I didn't want to tell you immediately." You didn't want to tell me at all." Yang Qing could guess the woman's thoughts. "Don't say useless things. Tell me what it is." Anxin hesitated for a while. It was obvious that she was struggling on the other end of the phone. In the end, she was afraid that she would make Yang Qing even angrier, so she briefly told him what had happened. After listening, Yang Qing's face darkened. He hung up and said to Edward, "Prepare a plane. I need it at any time." "You're going back to Huaxia early?" Edward said with a smile. Yang Qing nodded, but before that, he had to go to the Louvre to inform Lin Ruoxi. When he got up, he thought of something and said to Edward, "As for Catherine, tell her to take care of Ron's people when she wakes up. Ron is getting old, so he can't always be so considerate." Edward expressed his understanding. "Don't worry. Even if Aunt doesn't help, we will help you take care of the back garden." About half an hour later, Yang Qing arrived at the banquet hall of the Louvre. At this time, Lin Ruoxi should have already come out of the exhibition area. Shuttling through the crowd of men and women, it took Yang Qing a while to find Lin Ruoxi in the inner corner. Lin Ruoxi, who was wearing a white dress with pleated straps, sat quietly on a leather chair with a string of fine pearls hanging in front of her chest. Her delicate face, which was devoid of any makeup, was expressionless. She was so cold that even if the people around her wanted to come forward and strike up a conversation, they would retreat and leave a space around her. Holding a glass of champagne in her hand, Lin Ruoxi didn't even take a sip. She was looking at the crowd in front of her and lost in thought. Yang Qing walked to the woman's side and stood still. Lin Ruoxi slowly turned her head around. Seeing that it was Yang Qing, Lin Ruoxi's expression didn't change in the slightest. It was as if she had seen a stranger. This made Yang Qing's heart ache. He really didn't understand what was going on. "What's the matter?" Lin Ruoxi asked in a clear voice. The tone of a complete stranger made Yang Qing want to drag her out of the venue and ask her about it. But at this time, thinking about the trouble with Anxin in Zhonghai, he could only think about it later. So he said, "I want to go back to Zhonghai in advance." Lin Ruoxi still didn't react and nodded. "Got it." Yang Qing felt very depressed and added, "It's Anxin who is in some trouble. I'm worried that something will happen if we delay too long." "Got it." Lin Ruoxi still said these 3 words, as if everything was not something she cared about. Yang Qing clenched his fists. The current Lin Ruoxi was even colder than when he first met her. She was like a porcelain doll without human feelings, an ice sculpture. Not only did she make people feel sorry for her, she was also so dull that it seemed like she didn't know how to communicate. The more Lin Ruoxi behaved like this, the more scared Yang Qing was. But this woman didn't want to communicate with him at all, and he didn't know how to find a way out. After a long time, Yang Qing shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Then I'll leave first." "Okay." Lin Ruoxi didn't have any intention of asking any more questions. That one word was equivalent to sending Yang Qing off. Yang Qing didn't delay any longer. He turned around and left the banquet hall in big strides. It wasn't until Yang Qing's figure disappeared into the crowd that Lin Ruoxi raised her head and looked in the direction of his back, her eyes rippling. "Zhonghai Yulei International Entertainment Company, Director's Office." Anxin was wearing a black lady suit and a light coffee-colored pleated near-revealing skirt. She walked into the office with a white handbag in her hand. When she walked into the company, she maintained a sweet smile, but as soon as she entered the door, it disappeared immediately. She leaned against the door listlessly and closed her eyes for a while. Anshin had been troubled these past few days. What made her feel even more pained was that all of this was caused by herself. When Star of Yulei was held, she begged Yang Qing to let her take part in the hosting job because of her passion and competitiveness. Although she achieved her goal and the results were good, and the broadcasting station even tried their best to invite her to be a permanent host, she wasn't an ordinary girl after all. It was impossible for her to keep showing her face in the same broadcasting station. Originally, she thought that after Star of Yulei passed, her hosting career was almost over. Who knew that just because she appeared on TV a few times, she would be targeted by someone who wanted to attract attention? The director of Zhonghai's Radio and Television General Administration, a young high-ranking official's son named Lu Min, actually took a liking to her. As soon as she withdrew from her job at Star of Yulei, he began to pursue her relentlessly. In the past, when the An family was still a second-tier family in Zhonghai, Anshin had many suitors. However, because of the Lu family, who was engaged to her, many people flinched. After that, as the An family became the second largest family in Zhonghai, very few people dared to pursue her casually. Moreover, An Zaihuan, her father, only wanted to curry favor with Yang Qing. Of course, he would do everything he could to please his daughter. If ordinary people dared to pursue his daughter, wouldn't they be sent flying without any reason? However, Lu Min was different. According to An Zaihuan, the power behind this man was not to be underestimated. If it wasn't for his powerful background, how could a 31-year-old young man become the director of a municipal government agency? This was a department-level official, and an official who held the power of information and media channels. In a country like Huaxia, where the government held absolute power, a department that could control the media and public opinion was equivalent to controlling the direction of half of the society's attention. Many people who worked hard in the government until they were 50 or 60 years old rarely reached the level of a department-level official, let alone a 31-year-old man. And according to some people who were more familiar with Lu Min had only been transferred to Zhonghai for less than a year. His actual foundation was in the capital city of Yanjin. In a dangerous place like Yanjin, any second-tier family would be no worse than a first-tier family in Zhonghai. Which family didn't have a ministerial figure as their backer? Perhaps it would even implicate the real power holders in Huaxia. How could a businessman like the An family touch them? Because of this, An Zaihuan, who was unsure of Lu Min's background and was incomparably afraid, hoped that his daughter Anshin could tell Yang Qing about the situation here, and let Yang Qing decide what Anshin should do. To put it bluntly, whichever side was stronger, An Zaihuan felt that his daughter should follow. He didn't want to offend either side. This matter made Anshin quite angry. Ever since she received Yang Qing's care and the Rothschild family invested in the An family, An Zaihuan's status rose with the tide, and he also cared about Anshin. No matter what her father's main purpose was, at least Anshin tasted the warmth of being loved by a family. Unexpectedly, when someone with real power came to harass her, her father, who had just improved his image a little, immediately became a coward again. Not only did he not dare to touch his daughter's matters, but he also directly asked her to look for Yang Qing. He didn't even dare to express his opinion. As a result, it was as if Anshin was exposed to the air without any cover. She could only hide from Lu Min and use all kinds of reasons to reject him. And Zaihuan asked her to call Yang Qing, but Anshin didn't dare to do so. She wasn't worried that Yang Qing wouldn't stand up for her. Although she wasn't clear about Yang Qing's identity, as someone that even the Rothschild family had to respect, how could he be simple? The problem was that Huaxia was different from other countries. From the fact that the Rothschild family only came to invest and didn't dare to actually operate the industry, it could be seen that no matter how arrogant the foreign forces were, when it came to Huaxia, They still had to listen to the face of the Huaxia government. If that Lu Min really had an extraordinary background, and Yang Qing offended them because of her, causing irresistible trouble, how could Anxin forgive herself? Therefore, Anxin wanted to drag it out as long as she could. She could only hope that Lu Min was just acting on a whim and would retreat when he saw that she didn't listen to him. She didn't expect that Yang Qing, who was far away in Europe, would know about her. She didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Hearing Yang Qing's heavy tone, she couldn't hide it anymore, so she simply told him what happened. I don't know if he will be angry, Anxin muttered to herself and sighed. She carried her bag and walked to Yang Qing's desk. She sat down and prepared to deal with the documents that Wang Jie and the others sent. However, before Anxin could sit down, there was a knock on the office door. Come in, Anxin tried her best to cheer herself up and said in a clear voice. After the door was pushed open, a man wearing an Armani suit and well-tailored trousers walked in. The red and black tie on his chest made him look like a successful person. His face was fair without any facial hair, and there was a hint of maturity in his youth. He wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses and was about 1.8 meters tall. Miss Anxin, it's a meaningful morning to be able to see you at your workplace in the morning, the man said with a smile. Anxin's pretty face turned pale. She bit her thin lips, stood up and walked to the desk. Lu Min, what do you want? I already said I won't agree to it. Chapter 551. Lu Min wasn't in a hurry to reply. When his gaze landed on Anxin's graceful body, it was hard for him to look away, as if he was glued to her. Although Anxin was only wearing her usual office attire, the Japanese-style suit, short skirt, and white lace stockings perfectly displayed her exquisite figure. Her peach-like face, coupled with her slender calves and perky breasts, could easily make a man lose control of his adrenaline. This conservative yet sexy attire was naturally worn by Anxin because she was used to flirting with Yang Qing in the office, but now it was Lu Min's turn. Seeing Lu Min's passionate gaze on her, Anxin felt a wave of disgust. She frowned and walked back to her desk to sit down so that the man wouldn't see her under her skirt. Lu Min retracted his gaze regretfully and smiled. Missin, it's always harder to chase after a good girl. The more you hate me and reject me, the more I'll try my best to chase after you. Thank you for Director Lu's appreciation, but Anxin is just the daughter of a businessman. She's not worthy of a high-ranking official like you. Director Lu, don't waste your time, Anxin said indifferently. Lu Min was still smiling as he walked to the desk. Missin, I know a good breakfast restaurant and would like to invite you for a drink. I've already booked a private room. I told you, I won't agree to it. Anxin took a document from the side and lowered her head to read it, intending to completely ignore this man. A cold glint flashed across Lu Min's eyes. Missin, ever since I saw you on TV for the first time, it's been hard for me to take my eyes off you. I, Lu Min, have seen many daughters of prestigious families since I was young, but I believe that you're definitely the one who's fated with me. I'm not the kind of man who casually flirts with women. Although my words aren't very convincing, why don't you give me a chance to interact with you, Missin? I believe that Missin isn't an unreasonable woman. If there's anything that I can't meet Miss Anne's requirements, please let me know. Men can't use the hard way, so they switch to the soft way, moving their emotions and reasoning with them. Anxin put down the pen in her hand, raised her head and said, Director Lu, I really can't promise you. It doesn't matter to me whether you are really like what you said. I already have someone in my heart and I love him very much. I will never have anything to do with another man in my life. Hearing this, Lu Min grinned. Missin is indeed straightforward, but it doesn't matter. As far as I know, the sweetheart that Missin mentioned should be the director of this company, a person named Yang Qing. Am I right? Anxin's pretty face turned cold. You investigated us. Lu Min hurriedly waved his hand and said, Missin, you don't have to be angry. It's not that I wanted to investigate, but when I asked my subordinate about your background, someone took the initiative to investigate. But Missin, you should also thank me for specially asking for your information. Oh, you want me to thank you for investigating me? Director Liu, you really know how to joke, Anshin sneered. It's like this. Lu Min wasn't annoyed. He still said modestly, as far as I know, this Mr. Yang is actually a liar. He is actually husband and wife with Yu Lei International's Lin Ruoshi, General Lin. Although I don't understand why this man with a very ordinary resume would become General Lin's husband, there is no doubt that Mr. Yang lied to Missin. As soon as this was said, Anshin was quite shocked. Yang Qing once told her that his relationship with Lin Ruoshi was still in a confidential stage. This Lu Min actually dug out the relationship between Yang Qing and Lin Ruoshi during the process of investigating her. He was really a person with eyes and eyes everywhere. She didn't know what force was behind him. However, when someone pointed out that her man was actually a married man in front of her, Anshin naturally felt uncomfortable and slightly bitter. But this wasn't the time to be bitter. Anshin's eyes were cold, but she smiled and said, Director Liu, it seems that your investigation isn't deep enough. Don't you know that my husband has another woman and I already knew about it? What? Lu Min was really shocked. His eyes widened and his voice was a few degrees higher. Director Liu didn't hear it wrong. I, Anshin, am just someone's mistress. Moreover, I know that a man has a wife, but I still got involved and clung to him. Anshin saw that Lu Min lost his composure and she was secretly happy. As for how unbearable she was to describe herself, she didn't care. She had a carefree personality and didn't care about ethics and morals. As long as she could anger this clingy Lu Min away, she would be happier than anything else. Lu Min's chest tightened and the corner of his mouth twitched a few times. He sneered and said, I see. Good, Anshin. Why, Director Liu, do you still want to pursue me after knowing what kind of woman I am? Anshin's smile was like a flower. Lu Min's eyes were a little gloomy. Pursue? Why not? Anshin was stunned. Was Lu Min crazy? She was already someone's wife, a mistress, and he still wouldn't let her go? Was he so hungry that he couldn't be choosy, or was her charm really that great? In Anshin's eyes, even if Lu Min was really so hungry that he couldn't be choosy, there were countless beauties in Zhonghai. Since he could find out the relationship between Lin Ruoshi and Yang Qing, of course he would know what Lin Ruoshi looked like. Why didn't he pursue Lin Ruoshi? Anyway, he didn't care about a woman's reputation. Wouldn't it be more valuable to harass Lin Ruoshi, a married woman? This was also a kind of rebellious mentality of Anshin. She could only blame Lin Ruoshi for dragging her to play the game of smashing dolls, which scared Anshin. But in front of Lin Ruoshi, she could only call her sister and flatter her, afraid that she would make things difficult for her. Therefore, she didn't dare to say it out loud. In her heart, she always hoped that Lin Ruoshi would suffer some small retribution, so that she could balance her mentality. Moreover, Anshin also knew that there was a certain gap between her and Lin Ruoshi, whether it was appearance, background, identity, or the position in Yang Cheng's heart. Otherwise, she wouldn't have so easily cut off the idea of being Lin Ruoshi's legal wife, and would have tried all ways to pull Lin Ruoshi off the stage. Women were selfish when it came to love. If there was a chance, if it wasn't because they were helpless, who would let it go? Lu Min sneered a few times and said, Since Missin is so honest, then I will also be straightforward. There are many women around me who want to get close to me, and among them, there are many beauties who are comparable to Missin. But the first time I saw Missin, I knew that I was Miss Anne's woman. Now, since Missin is like this, then I think there is no possibility of marrying Missin. However, my sincerity has been trampled on by you. I will not let this matter rest. Seeing that Lu Min's elegant demeanor was gone, Anshin immediately felt that something was wrong. She forced herself to calm down and said, What do you want? This is Yu Lei International. Company? Lu Min laughed. Yu Lei International, so what? As long as I say the word, All the radio and television media in Zhonghai will block Yulei International's information, and all the programs of your entertainment companies will also have to stop. As long as I use some of my family's power, even if Yulei International's artists are banned, it will only be a matter of minutes." Panic appeared in Anxin's eyes. After all, she was only a young woman, and although Lu Min was only 31 years old, he was the son of a big family, a real son of a high official. He could be considered as a prince who had real power. Now that the two of them were facing each other, no matter how calm Anxin was, she was still afraid. Afraid now?" Lu Min sneered. Seeing Anxin's fear, he became proud. No matter how much she struggled, no matter how rich a businessman was, it was just a pile of waste paper in front of the country. "Anxin, if you know what's good for you, leave with me now. After I've played with you enough to make up for the loss of my mood, you can continue to be a vixen. I can't be bothered to care about you anymore." Lu Min's gaze became fierce. "If you continue to put on an act, even if it's your Yulei International's Lin Ruoxi, or your father and Zaihuan, I will make them suffer." Anxin's legs softened, and she almost fell to the ground. She took a step back and grabbed the armrest of the chair. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness. She didn't expect that not only would Lu Min not leave tactfully, but it would also cause Lu Min's dark and vicious nature to erupt. This method of doing things that did not make up for the gains made her extremely regretful, and at the same time she was filled with powerlessness. As a woman, she could rely on her father, but her father didn't dare to care about her, and her man was far away abroad. Who else could she rely on to help her out? Thinking back to a few months ago, Yang Qing saved her from the hands of the Lu family. She didn't expect to encounter such a thing again. She clearly wasn't a beautiful woman, so why did she have to encounter such things? Just when Lu Min was gloating and approaching Anxin with a sinister smile, someone knocked on the office door behind him. Knock knock. Lu Min turned around and saw a somewhat familiar man standing at the door. He had a roguish smile on his face, and his beard was unkempt. He was dressed in a casual short-sleeved shirt and shorts, and he seemed to be travel-worn. Yang Qing? Seeing the person, Anxin thought she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes and confirmed that it was her man. Anxin's heart almost jumped out of her chest. She was so excited that she couldn't hold back her tears. Lu Min, who already knew that Yang Qing was in Paris, was puzzled. Why did he suddenly return to Zhonghai? His face darkened. Chapter 552. I've only been gone for a few days and someone is already trying to steal my woman and ruin my company. It seems like Zhonghai is getting more and more difficult. Yang Qing scratched his messy hair and put his hands into the pockets of his pants. He walked to Lu Min and waved at Anxin. Anxin understood what the man meant. She jumped over happily and hugged Yang Qing's neck. She kissed him on the cheek. Tsk. The sound was dragged out on purpose. Although Xin was still feeling helpless earlier on, she didn't know how Yang Qing had suddenly returned to Zhonghai. But now that her man had suddenly appeared, all her burdens were lifted off her shoulders. She snuggled into Yang Qing's arms like a little bird and smelled the familiar scent of the man. She calmed down and wasn't afraid of Lu Min at all. Lu Min knew that this couple's performance was meant for him to see. It could be said that it was a direct display of strength. However, he wasn't an impulsive person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been assigned to a department-level position at such a young age. Although his family background was important, he was too weak. His family wouldn't push him out to embarrass himself. So you're Yang Qing. Why do you look like a beggar? Could it be that those good-for-nothing men these days rely on this kind of ugliness to attract women? Lu Min sneered. Yang Qing looked at his clothes and chuckled. I understand you. You're jealous. I'm jealous? Haha, you don't seem to know who you're talking to, Lu Min said arrogantly. Yang Qing ignored him. He placed his hand on Anxin's butt and touched it, causing Anxin to pout coquettishly. Lu Min sneered and looked at Yang Qing with interest. You're a married man and a vixen who's a mistress. Do you think you can embarrass me by acting like this? Aren't you guys being too childish? I'm not interested in knowing whether you're embarrassed or not. However, this is my office, and I didn't say you could come in. If you don't leave, I don't mind throwing you out of the window. Smiling, Yang Chen pouted his lips towards the French window behind him. He wasn't interested in talking to this fellow. This was a building with dozens of floors. Throw it out? It was better to say that he wanted to kill someone. Lu Min wouldn't take it seriously. In his eyes, Yang Qing was just a nobody who didn't know his background and only knew how to put on airs and climb up by relying on women. Thus, he smiled disdainfully. The one with the surname Yang, do you really think that you're so great just because you've latched onto Lin Ruoxi's thigh? If you know what's good for you, then get out of my way and let Anshin follow me. Let's have some fun. When I'm bored, I'll return. Without waiting for Lu Min to finish, he suddenly felt his neck being strangled by a steel-like hand. His body was involuntarily lifted into the air. His legs kept swinging and he really couldn't break free. His face turned red and he couldn't breathe. Yang Cheng's emotionless voice came into his ears. I already said, if you don't leave, I'll throw you out. You're really full of nonsense. Lu Min didn't know how he was caught by Yang Cheng. His vision just blurred for a moment, and the situation became like this. It was like a dream. When he heard Yang Cheng's words, a cold aura drilled out from his bones. Lu Min realized that this man seemed to really want to throw him out of the window. At this time, Yang Cheng didn't care about Lu Min's violent reaction at all. In his eyes, the man in his hands had no reason to live. No matter what his background was, even if he was the son of the president of the country, Huaxia, today, he had snatched his woman in front of him. Even if he was in a hurry to die, he had to fulfill his wish. Anshin's mouth was half open, and her face was full of surprise. She didn't expect Yang Cheng to do what he said. He really wanted to throw Lu Min out of the building. It was broad daylight. If a living person suddenly fell from dozens of floors, not only would it disturb the pedestrians outside, not only Yang Cheng, but Yulei International would also get into a lot of trouble. What's more, Anshin knew that Lu Min's background was definitely not an ordinary official family. If he poked a hornet's nest, even if Yang Cheng's background was extraordinary, he would probably be in trouble. Hubby, don't. Anshin was anxious. She ran up and pulled Yang Cheng's arm and begged, don't do this. If you throw him out of the building like this, the company will also have social pressure. His background is not simple. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the people of Yulei International. Yang Cheng was stunned. He stopped his footsteps. He didn't think that it would be so meticulous. To protect his woman, killing a mangy dog was not a big deal. But he forgot that he was in the company, and doing this would implicate others. After thinking for a while, Yang Cheng sighed. This was the restriction that came with returning to the secular society. The human heart was made of flesh, and he had to think for others. He threw Lu Min, who was almost suffocating, to the corner of the wall. Lu Min hit the wall, and blood flowed out of his nose. Get lost. Don't do anything that will make me want to kill you. Yang Cheng said indifferently and looked at him coldly. Lu Min was really scared. He didn't expect that there would be a madman who didn't care about his life, and wanted to kill him. Ever since he was young, who dared to do this to him? He looked at Yang Cheng and Anshin with hatred. He touched the blood on his nose, but he couldn't care less about the dirty look on his face. He quickly ran out of the office. Sigh, it seems that he still won't give up. Anshin was smart. She naturally saw through Lu Min's unwillingness and sighed. Yang Cheng reached out his hand and touched the woman's fair and tender face. He gently pinched it. Your man took a plane for more than 10 hours to rush back to Zhonghai just because of a phone call from you. Don't give me that sad look. Anshin finally understood. No wonder she just talked to Yang Cheng on the phone last night and met Yang Cheng this morning. Moreover, he was covered in dust. After receiving her call, He immediately returned to Shanghai from Paris, and rushed here as soon as he got off the plane. Her heart was suddenly filled with sweetness, as if she had knocked over a honey pot. She looked at Yang Qing with her charming eyes and beautiful face. She went forward and hugged Yang Qing tightly, and buried her head in Yang Qing's chest. She recalled that from the first time they met, Yang Qing had always been like a knight who protected her. Whenever she was in danger, he would always appear by her side in time. No matter how big the problem was, it seemed that as long as he appeared, it would be easily solved. Some women tried their best to get rid of their dependence on men, but in the end they often felt lonely in their hearts. It wasn't that they didn't want to have a harbor to anchor in, it was just that they couldn't meet the right person. An Xin had originally thought that she would be like a drifting duckweed with a father like that in this life in the family. She would become a sacrifice for a marriage alliance without anyone to rely on. However, the appearance of the man by her side had saved her from a world of darkness that never saw the light of day. "Thank you, hubby," Anshin murmured. "Although it's not nice to say it out loud, I feel that I'm happy to be your lover." Yang Qing held the little vixen's slender waist with one hand. Hearing his own woman say happy gave him a sense of accomplishment, but he pretended to be angry and said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? Lu Min has been pestering you for more than 2 days, right?" An Xian pouted, feeling wronged. "I thought I could solve it on my own. Besides, he didn't do anything too outrageous. He's just always sticking to me. I don't want to bring you trouble because of me." Yang Qing directly slapped Anshin's buttocks, causing a crisp paw sound, causing the woman to moan. "Afraid of causing trouble for me? If I hadn't come back in time, this wouldn't have been a problem, but an accident." Seeing that Yang Qing's expression wasn't good, although she knew that part of it was fake, Anshin was still a little anxious and pleaded, "Hubby, don't be angry. I also heard from my dad that Lu Min's background is very impressive, so I was afraid that it would bring you a lot of pressure, that's why I hesitated. I didn't mean to hide it from you. Hubby, please calm down. Next time something like this happens, I'll be the first to tell you immediately." Yang Qing also knew that Anshin was definitely thinking for him. Even if he had shown her a portion of his strength, it was still abroad after all. Everyone knew that Huaxia was separated from the international community. Therefore, he needed to put on an act so that the woman wouldn't be afraid to tell him in the future. In the past, when he snatched Anshin to be his own woman, part of it was because of a man's pride and possessiveness. After all these days of working and living together, this little vixen had already occupied quite a bit of a place in his heart. He really couldn't bear for her to be hurt in any way. After Anshin finished speaking, she was afraid that Yang Qing was still not satisfied. She pursed her cherry lips, raised her head and kissed Yang Qing's lip. Her charming cheeks were crimson, and her beautiful eyes were like water. Anshin tried her best to convey her remorse and love. From time to time, she would even use her lilac tongue to lick his lip. This kind of wet ambiguity was even more irresistible to a man than a kiss. What a vixen! Yang Qing's eyes instantly became fiery. Even though he had already enjoyed the two beauties, Lilith and Kathleen in Paris, after returning to Shanghai, he found that Anshin, who had always been by his side, was still as tempting as ever. "Hubby, I want it," Anshin said coquettishly. Her breathing had also quickened, and her full breasts were pressing against Yang Qing's chest, moving up and down. Yang Qing pinched Anshin's but with one hand, enjoying the plump feeling, and said with an evil smile, "I've been sitting on the plane for more than 10 hours, and I haven't showered for an entire day. My body is dirty, and you little vixen want it already?" "I don't care, a vixen isn't afraid of being dirty," Anshin said with a coquettish smile, and the tip of her pink tongue slid from Yang Qing's cheek all the way to Yang Qing's neck. Yang Qing's whole body quivered. Not caring whether it was dirty or not, he immediately pressed Anshin's soft and delicate body onto the spacious office desk beside him, and pounced on her. Chapter 553. The two of them had been playing all kinds of games in the office for a long time, so they were very familiar with it. They didn't think about whether the employees outside would find out. In fact, they weren't afraid of being found out. Yang Qing was an indifferent person, and Anshin was even more open-minded. Anyway, she was seducing such a man, and he wasn't a fickle person, so there was nothing to hide. However, after all, they were in the office, so Yang Qing couldn't go too far. So, after a quick round of sprinting, he stopped after half an hour. Anshin tried hard to make her voice not very loud, but the expression on her face after being moisturized was hard to conceal her charming and moving charm. The two of them cleaned up. Yang Qing planned to go home to take a shower, then go back to the company to pick up Anshin for lunch. These days, the little vixen had been harassed by Lu Min and angered by Anzaihuan. She had lost a lot of weight, and it made people's hearts ache to touch her. However, before Yang Qing could go out, the office phone rang. Looking at the number, it was obvious that it was an internal call. Yang Qing picked it up, only to hear his deputy, Zhao Ting, saying anxiously, "Director, someone suddenly came from the Western District Police Station, and it was Chief Lu himself. He said he wanted to arrest someone." After listening, Yang Qing raised his eyebrows, said, "Got it," and hung up the phone. Zhao Ting's voice was very loud on the phone, so Anshin naturally heard it. In an instant, the blush on her face disappeared without a trace, and she asked worriedly, "Is it that Lu Min?" Who else could it be?" Yang Qing snorted and laughed. "That guy is quite fast. In just half an hour, he called the chief of the police station, and he directly broke into the company to arrest someone. He's making a big deal out of this." At this time, the office door was pushed open from the outside, and a few police officers in police uniforms ran in. The one in front was a short but more capable middle-aged man. Judging from his uniform, it was obvious that he was a police supervisor. He should be Chief Lu. "You are Yang Qing?" Chief Lu looked at Yang Qing a few times and asked in a low voice. Yang Qing nodded. "I don't know why you came to my company. I don't seem to have broken the law." Yang Qing actually had some impression of Chief Lu, but it wasn't that they had met before. It was just that when he had a conflict with Chi Kai for Lu Mingyu, Chi Kai had called Deputy Chief Lu. However, at that time, Choi Yun was still in the Western District Police Station, and this guy was only a deputy. Now that Choi Yun had left, he was promoted. Now, Chi Kai's entire family had been killed, and this guy's family had been killed. "Humph, don't play dumb. Someone is accusing you of attempted murder, and you have already injured someone. The evidence is conclusive. It's useless to deny it. Arrest him." Chief Lu immediately ordered his men to arrest him. Several police officers rushed up and handcuffed Yang Qing without any courtesy. Anshin watched anxiously from the side, not knowing what to do. Yang Qing didn't think of resisting. He couldn't kill a bunch of police officers in broad daylight. He still wanted to live a good life in Zhonghai. Moreover, these police officers were only following the orders of Mr. Lu. They didn't do anything wrong. Unexpectedly, when Chi Kai asked Chief Lu to arrest him, Chief Lu didn't dare to make a move after checking his information. It was probably because of the problem with his information and Choi Yun's special instructions. Now that Lu Min wanted him to arrest him, Chief Lu hurried over. From this, it could be seen that Lu Min's status was much more important than Chi Kai's Chi clan. In fact, his status had even surpassed that of Choi Yun's Kai clan, which was quite a surprise to him. Many employees were already standing outside the office, including Zhao Ting and Wang Jie. Seeing that Yang Qing was arrested, they were so scared that they didn't dare to speak. They just looked at Yang Qing worriedly and didn't know what to do. "Don't just stand outside and do what you need to do. I'm not going to be executed," Yang Qing joked. He then turned around and said to Anshin, "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." Chief Lu sneered, "Don't talk so much nonsense. It's not up to you whether you can come back or not. Take him away." Then, a group of police officers pushed away the employees outside and escorted Yang Qing out of the office. Anshin watched helplessly as Yang Qing was taken away. She bit her lips with tears in her eyes. Although she knew that Yang Qing's skills were terrifying, it was the police station after all. Moreover, it was obvious that Lu Min wanted to do something to him. No matter how powerful Yang Qing was, he couldn't face the country's sharp weapon. After the police left, Zhao Ting and Wang Jie, who were outside, asked the employees to go back to work. They walked into the office and comforted, "Miss N, don't be too sad. Director Yang will definitely be fine. He can't disregard the law." Anshin had a bitter look on her face. She was born in the upper-class society of a big family. She knew that some forces really had no regard for the law, but she couldn't say it out loud. Wang Jie said, "Miss N, should we inform Director Yang's family? Or hire a lawyer for Director Yang first?" Family? Anshin hesitated for a while. Should she let Yang Qing's family know about this? If they found out that Yang Qing was arrested in the police station in the future, but she didn't tell them, would Yang Qing's family resent her? However, if she told them, would Yang Qing blame her for making his family worry? After thinking for a while, Anshin decided to call a lawyer first to help Yang Qing fight for his right. It would be better if he didn't suffer any hardship. Therefore, she asked Wang Jie and Wang Jie to leave first. Anshin walked to the desk and picked up the phone. She called the best lawyers in Zhonghai that she knew. After she finished this matter, Anshin hesitated whether she should call in Zaihuan or not. However, she gave up after thinking for a while. And Zaihuan was so afraid of Lu Min. Why would he help Yang Qing and provoke Lu Min? At this moment, someone knocked on the office door again. Anshin thought it was an employee and said, "Come in." It was two strangers that Anshin didn't know who walked in. It was a man and a woman. The man was tall and handsome. He was wearing a gray tight sports, short-sleeved shirt. The lines of his muscles were very distinct. The woman looked quite delicate and pleasant. Her figure was only below the man's chest. She was wearing a plain short-sleeved shirt and jeans without makeup. "You two are." Anshin looked at the two in confusion. The woman smiled slightly and said, "You are Anshin, Miss N, right?" Anshin nodded. How did the other party know her? "My name is Yezi. He is Tianlong." Yezi pointed to Tianlong beside her and said, "We want to tell Miss N that if you want to safely rescue Mr. Yang from the police station, it is best to call Mr. Yang's family." Anshin wasn't stupid. She immediately knew that these two people definitely knew Yang Qing, and had a way to save Yang Qing. She quickly grabbed Yezi's hand and said emotionally, "Miss Yezi, Mr. Tianlong, you can bring Yang Qing out, right? I beg you to help him. It's all my fault that he is in trouble. He is being slandered." Looking at Anshin's sad face, Yezi and Tianlong looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They weren't worried about whether Yang Qing was being slandered. This wasn't a problem. What they were worried about was that if the idiots in the police really provoked Yang Qing, he would turn the police station upside down and kill everyone. Then, the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade would really be embarrassed. Since Kai Ning was recalled to Beijing, the task of looking after Yang Qing was handed over to Yezi and Tianlong, who had recovered from his injury. Now, they were considered husband and wife in the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade. The newly appointed general, Kai Yunqing, knew that they had a good relationship with Yang Qing. Not only did he give them a year or two of rest, he also gave them the opportunity to stop Yang Qing from doing certain things at critical moment. Initially, Yezi and Tianlong thought that after the incident with the Xing family, no one would dare to provoke Yang Qing. However, they didn't expect this jinx to be so troublesome. He actually provoked Lu Min the moment he returned to Zhonghai from Paris. Lu Min wasn't a big deal, but Yellow Flame Iron Brigade didn't dare to offend Lu Min's backer. Therefore, they didn't go to the police station directly to get Yang Qing out. Instead, they took a roundabout route and asked Anshin to call Yang Qing's family. Of course, the key person to call was Guo Xuehua. Missin, don't be too nervous. Nothing will happen to Mr. Yang. We're just worried that things will get out of hand. Please call Mr. Yang's family first, especially Mr. Yang's mother. When the time comes, there will naturally be a solution, Yezi said softly. As a woman, she knew that when something happened to the man she loved, no matter what the situation was, she would be uncontrollably nervous and afraid. It was the same logic when Tianlong was seriously injured by the people from Sandstorm. Anshin was slightly stunned. She had never met Yang Cheng's mother. In her memory, Yang Cheng seemed to have mentioned that he was an orphan. She couldn't help but feel a little confused. Miss N, don't hesitate. It's urgent, Tianlong said solemnly. Only then did Anshin wake up. She hurriedly nodded, but then she thought of something. She didn't know Yang Cheng's home number. Here. Yezi handed a red phone to Anshin and said, "This is the number." As the person in charge of Yang Cheng, she naturally had all the contact information for Yang Cheng. Yezi had already prepared it. However, it was obviously not suitable for her and Tianlong to contact Yang Cheng's family. After all, they were all members of the organization hiding behind the scenes. It was not suitable to find anyone else, so she thought of giving it to Anshin. Anyway, Anshin was Yang Cheng's woman, so it couldn't be wrong. These two were used to seeing Yang Cheng hooking up with many beauties. Moreover, Chiangwei and Emotieni were living next door. They always thought that Yang Cheng would not hide anything. Everyone in the family knew about it, so they asked Anshin to call Guoshuahua. If Yang Cheng knew about it, he would definitely want to drive them out on the spot. In the eyes of the elders, he was an out-and-out playboy. Now that he had given up Anshin, wouldn't it make things worse? Would he still have a position in the family? No matter how tolerant Mother Wang and Guoshuahua were, they would probably roll their eyes at him, not to mention Jinxiu, who despised him for being a playboy. That would be great. Including Lin Ruoshi, he would have to face 4 pairs of supercilious eyes at home. At the thought of calling Yang Cheng's mother, Anshin would be lying if she said she was not nervous. She first downplayed the situation of Yang Cheng being arrested. She cleared her throat and took a few breaths to calm herself down. Then she carefully dialed the number on the phone. Tianlong and Yezi looked at each other and smiled bitterly. This daughter-in-law was really stressed when she saw her mother-in-law, and the pressure was even greater when she was not the real one. However, they didn't know that Anshin had almost cursed Yang Cheng thousands of times. Damn man, stinky man. He actually wanted her to tell him bad news when she talked to his mother for the first time. She was already a mistress, and after this phone call, there was no hope for her to like her in the future. He was really bad. But even though she thought about it, she still answered the phone. "Hello, who are you looking for?" A soft woman's voice came from the phone, making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Chapter 554. Since her son and daughter-in-law were all abroad for the Paris Fashion Week, the house was particularly quiet these days. However, for Guoshuahua, she enjoyed going shopping with her mother Wang every day, buying groceries, and occasionally chatting with her neighbors about whose sons were getting married and whose young couples were quarreling. This kind of ordinary life was something that Guoshuahua enjoyed very much. She didn't have to bear the burden of being the eldest daughter-in-law of the Yang family. She didn't have to be the wife of the chief, and she didn't have to be protected by personal guards everywhere she went. These days seemed glorious, but in fact, it made Guoshuahua feel mentally and physically exhausted all year round. Now, she handed over the charity orphanage that she had been running all these years to the foundation to manage, and wholeheartedly began to live at home. Although the internal problems of the Yang family hadn't been solved, and it was the first time that she had fallen out with Yang Pejuan in her 20-odd years of marriage, and she was disheartened, Guoshuahua still felt that God was treating her well after finding her eldest son who had been separated from her for 20 years, even if her son was always making her worry. Not to mention, her son's lover was living next door, and to be honest, she quite liked Chiangwei. After all, compared to the cold Lin Ruoshi, Qiang Wei was more understanding and likable. Even though she already knew that Qiang Wei came from a mafia family and was the queen of the Red Thorns Society in Zhonghai, who said that mafia members were necessarily bad people, Guo Shuihua wasn't a short-sighted and inflexible woman who didn't know how to be flexible. Moreover, as a mother who had neglected her duties for many years, how could Guo Shuihua forcefully interfere with her son's love life? Even if she could, to be honest, she couldn't bear to. Therefore, Guo Shuihua turned a blind eye. If Yang Qing really wanted to have an affair in the future, as his mother, she would acquiesce. Even if she was disgusted by this, it wasn't uncommon for a man to have one or two lovers in the upper class. As for the daughter-in-law and son's lover, it would be up to them to decide who could win the son's favor. Of course, as a mother-in-law, she still had the right to be partial. With this thought in mind, Guo Shuihua made delicious food from time to time and brought it to Qiang Wei to have a taste. The relationship between the two of them was much closer than that of Lin Ruoshi, the legitimate daughter-in-law. These days, Guo Shuihua also found that there was another young girl living in Qiang Wei's house. She was Mo Qianni, a young girl with similar looks and temperament. After the introduction, she found out that Mo Qianni was the best friend of her daughter-in-law, and also the vice president of Yulei International. She was one of Lin Ruoshi's most trusted people. She couldn't help but sigh. Beautiful girls really gathered together. Looking at Mo Qianni, who was more mature and sensible than Qiang Wei, the more Guo Shuihua looked at her, the more she liked her. Compared with Qiang Wei, Mo Qianni was a fair and above-board city female gold-collar worker. She was definitely the best choice for a good wife and mother. Her headache was that there were so many beautiful girls around her son, but why did the coldest and most difficult girl to get along with become her daughter-in-law? For a mother, whether her daughter-in-law's appearance was the most outstanding or not, she didn't think too much about it. All of this could be considered as God's will. Guo Shuihua would never have thought that when Yang Qing and Lin Ruoshi got married, it was still a contract marriage. It was just that their feelings became more and more blurry, and now they just made do with each other and didn't talk about it anymore. Just today, Guo Shuihua and Mother Wang had just returned home after buying groceries. Even if Yang Qing and Lin Ruoshi weren't home, there was still Jinxiu at home, who was preparing for the college entrance examination. As elders, the two of them treated Jinxiu like a little daughter, and tried their best to cook her delicious food. This girl had a pitiful life. Ever since Park Jongyun from Star Moon Group came to visit, she would often be in a daze, which made everyone in the family feel pity for her. Just as they placed the meat and vegetables in the kitchen, they heard the phone outside ringing. Generally speaking, the home phone rarely rang. Yang Qing and Lin Ruoshi didn't have many friends, so it could be said that half of the calls were made by mistake. Therefore, Guo Shuihua was closer to the door, so she walked over to pick up the phone. She asked who the caller was looking for, guessing that it was a mistake again. However, after a moment of silence, a gentle, somewhat shy female voice was heard. "Excuse me. Excuse me, is this Yang Qing's house?" The one who spoke was naturally Anshin. At that moment, her heart was beating wildly, and her voice was trembling. Guo Shuihua was slightly surprised. She could tell from the voice that it was a young girl, and she was looking for Yang Qing. She immediately paid attention and said seriously, "Yes, this is Yang Qing's house, and I'm his mother. Miss, is there anything I can help you with?" Anshin's breathing quickened. Indeed, it was Yang Qing's mother. She forced herself to calm down and said, "Hello, Auntie, I wanted to tell you something. Yang Qing, he was arrested in the West District Police Station." "What?" Guo Shuihua suspected that she had heard wrongly. She hesitated and said, "Miss, could you be mistaken? My son's name is Yang Qing, but he is currently on a business trip in Paris. How could he be arrested by the police in Zhonghai?" "It's true, Auntie. Yang Qing returned to the country early this morning, and something happened to him at the company, and then, and then the police just took him away. As she spoke, Anshin's tone became lower and lower. She wished that she could find a hole to hide in. If Guo Shuihua asked her why Yang Qing was arrested, should she directly say, "Your son was arrested because of me?" If Guo Shuihua knew about this, she would definitely think that she was not a good woman. Not only did she seduce Yang Qing, but she also harmed him. Anshin felt gloomy, but she had to continue communicating with Guo Shuihua in order to save Yang Qing. At this moment, Guo Shuihua had calmed down. She was not an ordinary housewife. She had many years of experience traveling abroad, and she was born in a prestigious family. She quickly grasped the crux of the problem. It was not the time to figure out why Yang Qing suddenly returned to the country and was arrested. What she needed to do now was to stabilize the situation. She could not let her son suffer in the police station. Of course, Guo Shuihua also knew that Yang Qing's martial arts were absolutely extraordinary. Even the country's secret forces could not contend against him. However, if Yang Qing really made a move, the trouble would only snowball. "I understand," Guo Shuihua said seriously. "I will handle this matter, but I hope to know the details later. May I know your name, miss?" My name is Anshin," Guo Shuihua murmured. This name sounded nice, and so did her voice. She should be a beautiful girl. Honestly, her son was not very handsome, and as a mother, she could only objectively say so. However, there were a lot of beautiful girls around him. "Miss Anshin, I will go to the West Side police station later. Is it convenient for you to go with me? I want to meet you and figure out the situation face to face." Guo Shuihua was very clear-headed. Her son was in trouble, and this girl called her. It must not be an ordinary relationship. Of course, she had to meet her for any reason. As for finding out the truth, it was just an excuse. She would naturally find out the reason when she went to the police station to see Yang Qing. Anshin was very anxious. She was happy and afraid. She was happy that she would have a chance to meet Yang Qing's mother. She was afraid that what if she didn't like her? Moreover, as the third party, it was very likely that she didn't like her. She might even scold her for being a scourge. This was Anshin thinking too much. With Guo Shuihua's upbringing, even if she clearly thought that way, she would not say such harsh words to a young girl. "Okay, Auntie, I will definitely go." Even though Anshin was afraid, she did not dare to reject. To be honest, she also hoped to see Yang Qing come out from the police station. Otherwise, Anshin would not be able to protect Anshin. After hanging up the phone, Guo Shuihua said to Mother Wang in the kitchen, "Yulan, I will go out to do something. Just make something simple for lunch. Don't wait for me. Zhenxiu will make something delicious for dinner when she comes back." Yulan was naturally Mother Wang's real name. Mother Wang also knew that Guo Shuihua had to take care of some work on a daily basis. Thus, she did not suspect much and responded. Naturally, Guo Shuihua would not let Wang Yulan and Zhenxiu know that Yang Qing was arrested. As long as she brought Yang Qing out, there would be no problem. After walking out of the door, Guo Shuihua took out her phone. Although she felt that as the eldest daughter-in-law of the Yang family, it should not be a problem to go to the police station and bring Yang Qing back. For the sake of safety, she still needed to find out the specific reason why he was arrested. The most important person in Zhonghai that she knew was naturally her husband, Yang Pejuan. However, Guo Shuihua would not take the initiative to call that man. Ever since the incident where Yan Bushue insulted Yang Qing and Yang Pejuan did not care about it, Guo Shuihua hated that man from the bottom of her heart. How could she easily ask Yang Pejuan for help? Therefore, Guo Shuihua called Yang Jiyu, her sister-in-law. After all, Yuan Hui and Yang Jiyu controlled the biggest Yuan family in Zhonghai. They could be said to be the most powerful local tyrant in Zhonghai. All the forces in Zhonghai would have to show some respect to them. Of course, there was another reason why Guo Shuihua did this. Her sister-in-law, Yang Jiyu, was a very protective person. She was much more compassionate than Yang Pejuan. If she knew that Yang Cheng's nephew was arrested, even if she and her husband could not rescue Yang Cheng in a short time, she would definitely contact her father in Beijing, Yang Gongming. Guo Shuihua knew that as a daughter-in-law, she did not do enough for her father-in-law. Therefore, she did not dare to be thick-skinned and beg Yang Gongming for her son. Therefore, she thought of asking Yang Jieyu to inform the old man. Yang Gongming acknowledged this grandson and also felt guilty about it. As long as Yang Gongming took action, Guo Shuihua believed that no one would dare to touch Yang Cheng. Although she did not know the strength of her father-in-law, she knew that Yang Gongming was not as simple as he seemed to be based on the fact that the Yang family was still one of the 4 big families in Beijing. Chapter 555. Yang Jieyu's surprised voice came through the phone. Sister-in-law, why are you calling me? I thought you were mad at my brother and didn't want me anymore. Guo Shuihua smiled bitterly. She was actually a little embarrassed. If it wasn't for her son, she wouldn't have thought of calling Yang Jieyu. Jieyu, this isn't the time to chat. I'm calling you because of Yang Cheng, Guo Shuihua said. Yang Jieyu paused and said, What happened to Yang Cheng? Did he get into trouble again? Or did he make you angry? I don't know if he got into trouble, but it's definitely not a small problem. He was just arrested by the West District Police Station. I'm on my way there, Guo Shuihua sighed. Yang Jieyu exclaimed, What? Someone dared to arrest him? Yang Jieyu knew that Yang Cheng had an extraordinary background. She had witnessed Yang Cheng single-handedly planning how the Red Thorns Society annexed East Star overnight, and how he injured his nephew, Yang Lai, who was a true disciple of Kunlun sect. Yang Chen was a figure that even the country's secret dragon group feared. Who would be so blind as to touch him? Don't worry too much, sister-in-law. I think it's some blind guy who took the wrong medicine. I'll get Wei to call the police right away and explain the situation. I believe everything will be fine, Yang Jieyu said calmly. Although Guo Shuihua felt that things wouldn't be so simple, she hoped that was the case. Since her daughter-in-law, Lin Ruoshi, didn't have much other than cash, cars, and houses, Guo Shuihua drove a random car to the police station. It was convenient without the help of the guards. She rushed all the way to the West District Police Station. In less than 10 minutes, Guo Shuihua got out of the car and saw a few nervous people waiting for someone outside the police station. She glanced around. The most eye-catching one was a white-collared beauty in a black suit and a pleated coffee-colored skirt. She looked charming and charming. Guo Shuihua guessed that this girl was Anshin on the phone. When Anshin saw the elegant and mature woman walking towards her, she screamed in her heart, This can't be Yang Cheng's mother. This can't be Yang Cheng's mother. How could this be? In the end, Guo Shuihua walked to Anshin and extended her hand. She smiled gently. Anshin, I'm Guo Shuihua, Yang Cheng's mother. Anshin almost fainted. Although her husband was very domineering, he didn't look like a man who had such a beautiful mother. The gap between the mother and son was too big. One was like a queen in the palace, and the other was like a hooligan on the street. Although she liked this hooligan very much, Anshin shook hands with Guo Shuihua in a silly way. She was so stiff that she didn't know what to say. Looking at Anshin's obedient and pitiful look, she wanted to please but was cowering. Guo Shuihua sighed. What an innocent girl! Her son's ability to harm girls was unparalleled. If she still couldn't see through Anshin's identity, then Guo Shuihua had lived for more than 40 years in vain. In fact, Anshin didn't really think that she couldn't let it go. It was just that she was the reason why Yang Cheng was arrested. Even if she didn't want to, she didn't know how to say it. But now wasn't the time to think about how much her son was hiding from her. Guo Shuihua said, Did you guys go in? What's the situation? Anshin said, I don't know what's wrong with the police station. We can't even go in. We hired a lawyer and just broke in, but I don't know what happened. At this moment, a bald man in a suit ran out of the police station in a panic. He was carrying a briefcase, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. He seemed to be in shock. Wang Jie ran up and asked, Lawyer Zhang, what's the situation? Why did you come out? Where's Director Yang? Lawyer Zhang pushed Wang Jie's hand away and said angrily, What kind of person did you offend? You guys made such a big mistake, and you still want me to bail you out? Are you trying to mess with me? You guys are on your own. I'll refund all the money to you. I'm just a small lawyer, and I can't handle this case. With that, Lawyer Zhang ran away in a huff, without explaining anything. Wang Jie was discouraged. How did this happen? Who is the other party? Lawyer Zhang isn't even afraid of the leaders of the municipal bureau. I don't think it's that simple. Lawyer Zhang not only doesn't dare to handle it, but he also doesn't dare to say anything. This situation is very serious, Zhao Ting analyzed. Guo Shuihua frowned. She realized that the situation seemed to be different from what she expected. Moreover, Yang Jieyu should have called at this time. Why wasn't there any news? Therefore, Guo Shuihua, who was initially confident, became even more worried. I'll go in and take a look. Guo Shuihua didn't allow any explanation and walked towards the police station's entrance. But before she reached the entrance, 2 police officers blocked Guo Shuihua's way with cold eyes and said, We're sorry, there's a criminal being interrogated today. It's not safe inside. Please leave. Do you know who I am? Do you know the consequences of blocking me? Guo Shuihua glanced at them coldly. After all, she was a person of high status. Her gaze still made the police officers shrink. But for some unknown reason, the police officer said, No matter who you are, we're just following orders. Guo Shuihua's face darkened. I'm Guo Shuihua, the wife of Jiangnan District's Commander-in-Chief. How dare you block my way? Commoners might not know about this title, but it would be strange if the criminal police and armed police didn't know about it. The 2 police officers were indeed stunned. Looking at Guo Shuihua's attire and temperament, they honestly couldn't be sure. But then, the police officer clenched his teeth and said, Even if you're really the wife of the chief, we can't let you go. Moreover, Madam hasn't shown sufficient proof. Guo Shuihua was stunned. In the past, she had bodyguards sent by the military. Naturally, she could reveal her identity at any time. Now that her bodyguards were gone, she didn't know how to prove that she was the wife of the chief. Even if she didn't really care about this title, she really needed it at this moment. Her phone suddenly vibrated. Guo Shuihua was overjoyed. She picked it up and saw that it was Yang Jieyu calling. Hello Jieyu, how's it going? Guo Shuihua's tone was a bit relaxed. She thought that Yang Jieyu must have settled the matter. That was why she called after so long. But unexpectedly, Yang Jieyu's tone was inexplicably complicated. She said, Sister-in-law, this time, Yang Qing seems to have really gotten himself into big trouble. Guo Shuihua's heart sank. What happened? What did you find out? Anxin, Zhao, and Wang saw that Guo Shuihua was on the phone and her face was getting worse. They couldn't help but tremble with fear. They didn't know what exactly happened. Tianlong and Yezi clearly said that Guo Shuihua had the ability to rescue Yang Qing. Why was there still no news? Was she lying to them? Sister-in-law, I've asked a few people who are close to me in the police station. They told me that Yang Qing attempted to murder Lu Min from the Lu family for a girl. This is a criminal case, and the crime is very serious. Yang Jieyu said. Lu Min? Lu family? Guo Shuihua suddenly recalled something. Jieyu, are you talking about the Lu family in Beijing? Of course. Otherwise, how could the other Lu family have the ability to make Chief Lu go all out to arrest Yang Qing? Besides, Chief Lu wouldn't dare to touch Yang Qing's background. Yang Jieyu smiled bitterly. Guo Shuihua finally panicked. She said hurriedly, Jieyu, you must help Yang Qing. I don't know what to do now. The police won't even let me in. Yang Jieyu comforted her. Don't worry, sister-in-law. Although it won't be easy to deal with the Lu family, the Yang family isn't a pushover either. Wei is contacting brother now. I'll go and persuade him too. Yang Qing is his son after all. He can't just leave him to die. He can forgive a mistake once, but he can't do it again. When Guoshuahua heard that they were going to seek help from Yang Pejuan, she wanted to stop them. However, she felt that it might be effective. After all, Yang Pejuan was more of a deterrent than the Yuan family. This was the territory of the Jiangnan military district. Even the Lu family had to give face to Yang Pejuan. Therefore, even if it was a little embarrassing, Guoshuahua had to accept it. Yang Jiyu was still worried and said, "Don't worry, sister-in-law. If brother is really that ruthless, even if I have to bear the consequences of being scolded by father, I will call father and beg him to help. You should be relieved now, right?" Guoshuahua was relieved. She had been waiting for these words. She even hoped that Yang Jiyu would call Yang Gongming immediately. However, she knew that it was impossible. Yang Gongming had ignored the outside world for many years. Unless he was willing, he would definitely be unhappy if the younger generation came to him for help. After the call was hung up, Anshin couldn't help it anymore. She came forward and asked timidly, "Auntie Yang Qing, how is he?" Guoshuahua's gaze turned cold. She stared at Anshin and said, "You're the one who provoked that Lu Min, right?" Anshin's legs were a little weak. She didn't expect that the gentle and beautiful woman would suddenly look at her with such a cold gaze. However, she still nodded her head. "Do you know who Lu Min is? Do you know how much trouble you've brought to my son?" Guoshuahua raised her voice a few octaves. Anshin's eyes started to well up. She was a strong and independent woman. However, facing the blame of her beloved man's mother, and this was the first time they met, Anshin felt wronged and blamed herself. She couldn't hold back her tears. "Auntie, I'm sorry. I know that Lu Min's Lu family is a family in Beijing. Even my father doesn't dare to provoke them. They must be very powerful, but I don't know how it ended up like this," Anshin sobbed. Guoshuahua didn't soften up. They were both women. She didn't have any protective feelings for the fairer sex. She sneered. "A family in Beijing? Very powerful? Do you think that if Lu Min's Lu family was just a family in Beijing with some power, they could really make things so bad? Do you know what Lu Min's real background is?" Chapter 556. Yang Qing, who was inside the police station, had no idea what was going on outside. After he was brought to the interrogation room by a few policemen, Chief Lu dismissed the unimportant policeman and ordered someone to bring in a document. He placed it on the table and looked at Yang Qing coldly, saying, "Yang Qing, sign this." It wasn't the first time Yang Qing came to the police station, but the previous time, the chief was always Choi Yun. Now that there was someone else, he really wasn't used to it. Looking at the document on the table, he was instantly amused. It turned out to be a confession. On it was the crime of him deliberately murdering Lu Min, as well as a series of small crimes such as extramarital affairs. Adding all these crimes together, even if he wasn't sentenced to death, he would still have to spend 10 to 20 years in prison. "Chief Lu, why did you ask me to sign it without even interrogating me? This isn't right." Yang Qing smiled playfully. "Whether it's right or not, it's not up to you to decide," Chief Lu sneered. "I've already seen your resume. Your background information is very problematic, and you've been brought to the police station several times, but you left without any punishment. I seriously suspect that you have connections with bad people, and it's very likely that you're an undocumented immigrant from overseas. Moreover, today you made a move on Chief Lu, the evidence is conclusive, and the forensic doctor has confirmed it. You won't be able to escape the punishment of the law. I advise you not to play any petty tricks, and don't waste time. Sign what you need to sign, so that we don't have to make you confess to your crimes personally." The threat in his words was already very strong. Yang Qing touched his nose. He initially thought that after he went to the police station, there would at least be a lawyer coming to stabilize the situation. But now, it seemed that Lu Min's power was not to be underestimated. He actually had the intention of covering the sky with one hand, and even a lawyer wasn't allowed to come in. Now, it seemed that his idea of getting bailed out and then finding a way to resolve this matter was not going to work. The other party was forcing him to give in. But what puzzled Yang Qing the most was that the people from the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade actually didn't come out to solve this matter. What did that mean? Could it be that they didn't dare to offend Lu Min because of him? But no matter what the reason was, Yang Qing was really unhappy. He knocked his fingers on the table twice and had a plan. He asked, "Director Lu, what if I don't sign it?" "You're not signing?" Bureau Chief Lu grinned. "Then we can only enforce the law strictly. There's no need to be polite to a murderer like you." With that, Chief Lu waved his hand, and 4 big men in police uniforms blocked the door with batons in their hands, staring at Yang Qing fiercely. Yang Qing clicked his tongue. Good heavens, just a moment ago it was intentional murder, and in the blink of an eye, the label of murderer was pinned on him. He was indeed a murderer, but no matter how many people he killed, it would not hinder Lu Min. To be honest, for Yang Qing to go to the police station with these guys, it was already a very patient approach. He also had a lot of considerations. First of all, his headache was starting to act up again. He hadn't checked Jane yet, and he was always worried that it would worsen if he killed someone. Although in the eyes of others, Yang Qing might be a devil, Yang Qing himself didn't want to really become a murderer one day. Furthermore, Yang Qing wasn't a lone wolf who could do whatever he wanted. Even if he really had the ability to destroy the other party, he was worried that it might implicate the people around him to take revenge on his family and friends. Therefore, he didn't want to be too arrogant when he could handle things in a low-profile manner. After all, he was also a person with a family background, and it was impossible for him to ignore everything. As the saying goes, forgive people when you can. Yang Qing originally thought that he would just take a step back, but he didn't expect that the other party wanted to drive him to a dead end. "Where is Lu Min?" Yang Qing thought for a moment and asked. "Humph, Bureau Chief Lu's name is not something you can call, ugh." Bureau Chief Lu sneered contemptuously, but he didn't expect his neck to be grabbed by a hand, and he couldn't speak. Yang Qing said in Chief Lu's ear, "I'm not in the mood to listen to your nonsense. I ask you, where is Lu Min? If you dare to say half a word of nonsense, I will kill you now." He wasn't a good person. Since the other party spared no effort to kill him, Yang Qing didn't intend to deal with this matter easily. Lu Min wanted to touch his woman and even wanted to kill him, so he simply let him die first. As for his family's background, as long as it wasn't Hongming's people, Yang Qing didn't think that Hua Xia could stop him. The madman who had calmed down went crazy again. He was crazier than those who were crazy on ordinary days. Bureau Chief Lu's whole body was covered in cold sweat. He felt the dark and bloody aura on Yang Qing's body. It was as difficult to resist as 1,000 needles piercing into his bones. The 4 policemen who were about to make a move were stunned. They didn't know what to do. Looking at Yang Qing's seemingly calm but terrifying expression, they didn't dare to move. Yang Qing let go of his hand and let Bureau Chief Lu speak. Bureau Chief Lu coughed a few times. His face was pale. He raised his trembling hand and pointed at Yang Qing. While he was shocked by this man's horrifying skills, he remembered that the person who asked him to do this was Lu Min. He suppressed his fear and said in a low and ruthless voice, "Yang Qing, don't be ungrateful. Don't think that you can make me afraid of you. If you dare to touch even a hair on my head, the Lu family will never let you go. You." Chief Lu didn't have the chance to continue, because Yang Qing had slapped him on the right side of his face. "Bureau Chief." The 4 police officers turned pale with fright. After being slapped by Yang Qing, Bureau Chief Lu's head turned 180 degrees. With a caw-caw sound, Bureau Chief Lu's face had already turned to his back. His eyes were wide open as he breathed his last. In fact, he was still standing. A few traces of scarlet appeared in Yang Qing's eyes. Bureau Chief Lu's words finally ignited his anger. In order to not offend Lu Min, he ignored his warning. Then, he deserved to die. Raising his head, Yang Cheng's gaze was like that of a ferocious beast. It swept across the 4 police officers' shocked faces and said in a low voice, "Tell me, where is Lu Min?" The 4 police officers were completely stunned. This man had actually killed the chief of the police station with a slap without any warning. Had he lost his mind? "If you don't say it, you will die too." Yang Qing frowned. The 4 police officers felt the pressure on their faces and felt as if the entire interrogation room was about to collapse. How could they know where Lu Min had gone? They wanted to say, "I don't know," but they didn't even have the strength to open their mouths. At this time, the other police officers who saw the scene in the interrogation room from the surveillance camera were in a mess. How could they sit still after seeing the chief killed by the suspect? With a bang, the door to the interrogation room was kicked open. "What's going on? Raise your F***king hands. Bureau Chief. Bureau Chief, you." The dozens of police officers in the police station all held their guns and rushed to the periphery of the interrogation room. When they found that their bureau chief was indeed dead, they panicked and didn't know what to do. They could only point the muzzles of 20 to 30 pistols at Yang Qing with the safety bolts off. It was obvious that they were prepared to shoot Yang Qing at any time. Only then did the 4 police officers react. They quickly took out their guns and shouted, "Yang Qing, raise your hands. You murderer, or else we will shoot." This murderer was indeed a crime, but the person who died was the chief of the police station. While everyone present was shocked, they also gritted their teeth. "Where is Lu Min?" Yang Qing didn't care about these black holes and continued to ask coldly. Although the police officers all had guns, they had really shot at people a few times. Seeing that Yang Qing actually asked them with a gloomy face while facing so many guns, they couldn't help but be stunned on the spot, not knowing what to do. Furthermore, they didn't know who Yang Qing was, nor who Lu Min was. They really didn't know anything about him. Yang Qing was silent for a while. Seeing that no one answered, he tacitly agreed that these guys really didn't know, so he walked out. Even if they didn't say anything, he would still find Lu Min. "Stop. Don't move. If you go any further, we will shoot." A few bold police officers roared. Yang Qing didn't care about them. To him, even if a bullet was shot out from his skin, it wouldn't be a threat at all. The next moment, the police finally couldn't take it anymore. The 4 police officers who were threatened by Yang Qing first took the lead and pulled the trigger of their pistols. Outside the police station, under the gloomy sky, the atmosphere was also very gloomy. Listening to Guoshuehua's loud scolding, Anxin was already speechless. Zhao Ting and Wang Jie both pitted Anxin, but they couldn't interrupt. They were also people with discerning eyes, and they could see that Director Yang's mother wasn't simple. After scolding for a long time, Guoshuehua was finally tired. She was out of breath, and her face was pale. She stopped talking and let out a long sigh, and her eyes were red. Anxin was already sobbing, and her tears kept falling. She hated herself for always getting into trouble, and hated herself for being a host. She couldn't defend herself against Guoshuehua's scolding. Everything she had today was almost saved by Yang Qing, but she brought such trouble to Yang Qing. Even if Guoshuehua didn't say anything, she couldn't erase the hatred in her heart. Guoshuehua closed her eyes for a while, trying to calm herself down as much as possible. She heard Anxin's sobbing, and when she turned her head, she saw that the girl was crying her eyes out. Her pretty face was full of sadness, but there was no trace of sadness. Guoshuehua also realized that she seemed to have been too harsh on Anxin. This girl was really worried about her son. Moreover, it wasn't her fault that a beautiful woman attracted other men. Guoshuehua was once young, and there was no right or wrong in these matters between men and women. Sigh. Guoshuehua couldn't help but feel a trace of guilt in her heart. She reached out to hold one of Anxin's hands, picked it up, and gently patted it. She said warmly, "Don't cry, it's my fault." Anxin's delicate body trembled slightly. She raised her head in disbelief, and a pair of tearful eyes looked at Guoshuahua blankly. Guoshuahua smiled bitterly and said, "Miss N, I lost my composure. I apologize to you. It wasn't your fault, and I shouldn't have scolded you like this." "No, no." Anshin hurriedly shook her head and said miserably, "Auntie, it's my fault. I couldn't help at all, but I caused trouble for Yang Qing. You can scold me or hit me, but I really hate myself. I should have known that Lu Min's identity was definitely not ordinary. Otherwise, my dad wouldn't have been so afraid." Looking at the girl's self-reproachful and hateful expression, Guoshuahua also felt a burst of heartache. Guoshuahua had been through many hardships, and her judgment of people was not ordinary. Naturally, she could tell whether Anshin was sincere or not. What a good girl! Her tears were all from the bottom of her heart. Her heart was also tied to her son. Even if it wasn't an honorable identity, how could she have the heart to scold a woman who loved her son so deeply? Wang Jie and Zhao Ting, who were at the side, also sighed in their hearts. They were quite touched, and Wang Jie's eyes were even more misty with tears. In the company, many people knew about the ambiguous relationship between Anshin's secretary and Director Yang. As Yang Cheng's left and right hands, of course they knew it better. However, they all thought that the two of them were just fooling around. They didn't expect that a rich young lady like Anshin would have such deep feelings for him. "Miss N, I'll call you Anshin," Guoshuahua said to Anshin with a bit of shame. Anshin's sobs stopped abruptly. She didn't expect that Guoshuahua would suddenly call her that. In a sense, it was a certain recognition of her. If it was on a normal day, she would definitely be overjoyed. After all, this was a man's mother's affection for a mistress. However, at this moment, Yang Qing was still in the police station. She didn't know how he was doing, so she could only nod with a bitter smile. Guoshuahua lowered her eyes sadly and said, "You don't know how important Yang Qing is to me. I lost him painfully for more than 20 years, and it wasn't easy for me to find him. I spent a lot of effort to stay by his side. If something bad happens to him, I really don't have the courage to live anymore." Anshin didn't expect that Guoshuahua and Yang Qing had such a past. No wonder she didn't hear Yang Qing mention that he had a mother before. It turned out that they met after more than 20 years. She wanted to comfort Guoshuahua, but before Anshin could speak, she heard continuous gunshots. "It's in the police station," Zhao Ting exclaimed. The four of them turned their heads to look, and their faces turned pale. Anshin and Guoshuahua's hearts sank. However, before they could rush in, a man and a woman had already rushed into the police station in front of them. Chapter 557. These two people were Sky Dragon and Yezi, who had been watching the situation from the side. When they heard gunshots in the police station, they knew that the situation was not good. They thought that with Guoshuahua's means, she could contact the Yang family and settle the matter. Unexpectedly, they were too late. By the time Sky Dragon and Yi rushed to the periphery of the police station interrogation room, the gunshots had already stopped. The crackling sound of gunshots, which sounded like popping beans, was at least 100. It was caused by the dozens of policemen present at the scene who had all used up their handheld bullet. In the smoke-filled office of the police station, all the police officers were stunned and speechless, because the target of their collective provocation was completely fine. Through the white smoke, Sky Dragon and Yezi looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They saw the expressionless man in a short-sleeved shirt and baggy pants walk out of the crowd of policemen calmly. Everywhere he walked, the ground was full of empty magazines. Was he still human? Was he shooting a movie? The group of policemen stared at the guns in their hands, and even suspected that the guns in the police station were fake. Were they special effects? Sky Dragon and Yezi naturally knew that the bullets would be blocked by Yang Cheng's protective true qi before they could even get close to him. It was already very kind of Yang Cheng not to reflect the bullets back. What they were most afraid of was that Yang Cheng would become angry and massacre the entire police station. Actually, when Yang Chen was shot by a group of people earlier, He did have that thought, but he forcefully suppressed it. He knew that most of the policemen were innocent. Moreover, he would definitely lose control of his brain if he were to kill dozens of ordinary people at once. Therefore, he used all his strength to circulate the endless resolve restoration scripture to suppress his killing intent. When Yang Qing saw Sky Dragon and Yezi arrive at the scene, he glanced at them casually and then walked out of the police station. The scarlet in his eyes was a little more intense than before. The group of policemen no longer had the courage to stop him. It was good enough that they did not faint. "Brother Yang, where are you going?" Yezi came in front of Yang Qing and asked anxiously. Yang Qing glanced at her and said, "Get out of the way." "I won't." Yezi shook her head and said loudly, "You must be going to find Lu Min." "Brother Yang, listen to me. Lu Min's backer is not only the Lu family, his grandfather is—" Before Yezi could finish, Yang Qing had already grabbed her arm and thrown her away. Yezi screamed. She was actually average in the dragon group, so she could not withstand the force of Yang Qing's throw. Fortunately, Sky Dragon caught her in time and saved her from the pain of hitting the wall. "I don't care who he is. If you can't tell me where he is, don't stop me. Don't think that I will give you face just because I know you," Yang Qing said coldly and continued to walk out. He still wanted to say something but was stopped by Sky Dragon, who shook his head and said solemnly, "Don't say anything. He won't listen to anything. Didn't you see his eyes? He really wants to kill people. What should we do? If something happens to Lu Min, Beijing will be in chaos," Yezi said worriedly. Sky Dragon sighed. "Let's stabilize the situation first. Anyway, we've already informed Lu Min. He can take a plane or a train and leave Zhonghai as soon as possible. It's best if he escapes back to Beijing. Otherwise, who can stop that killer?" Yezi bit her lips helplessly. She knew that they could not do anything. She said bitterly, "It's all that Lu Min's fault. I'm so angry." Sky Dragon looked at his wife's angry face and could only shake his head with a bitter smile. He then looked at the dumbfounded police officers and felt a headache coming on. These people saw an unusual person and could not be easily revealed. This mess had to be cleaned up by the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade for Yang Qing. On the other hand, Yang Qing took out his phone as he walked out of the police station. He called the captain of the Sea Eagles, Molan. As the Berserk Dragon Reserve team was nearing the end of their training, Molan had already brought another member, Fanny, back to the temporary base in Zhonghai. The last few training subjects of the Berserk Dragon Reserve team did not require the participation of the two actual combat instructors. Their mission had already been completed. "Your Majesty Pluto, what can I do for you?" Molan knew that Yang Qing had returned to Zhonghai early. Chief Sauron had already informed the Sea Eagles of what happened in Europe. Molan and the others were still excited about their idol's killing spree when they received a call from Yang Qing. His tone became especially sincere. Yang Qing did not waste any time and said coldly, "Help me find out who he is. He's called Lu Min, around 30 years old. He's a department-level official. I want his exact location. I'll give you 3 minutes." Molan replied with a yes and immediately hung up. At this time, Guoshuahua, Anshin, and the others ran over from the entrance of the police station. The guards at the entrance knew that something had happened inside and did not stop them. Guoshuahua saw that Yang Qing was as good as new and did not seem to be injured. She immediately calmed down and hugged Yang Qing with tears in her eyes. She said emotionally, "Yang Qing, what happened? They didn't make things difficult for you, did they? What's with the gunshots?" Anshin also breathed a sigh of relief. Although she knew that Yang Qing's identity was extraordinary and that he was even more skilled, she was still worried. Seeing that Yang Qing was fine, her guilt lessened a little. Yang Qing's heart softened and the scarlet in his eyes faded a little. The concern of his family and loved ones was something that he could not bear to part with. It was for these people who truly loved him that he was willing to stay in Zhonghai, even if he was constantly being monitored. Even if he could not summon the wind and rain like he could in foreign countries, and blood would be spilled on the spot. However, it was also this moment of warmth that made Yang Cheng's murderous intent grow even stronger. That's right, for the sake of his family and loved ones, a hidden danger like Lu Min must die. Anshin, bring my mom home. I have something to do. Yang Qing turned around and said to Anshin. Anshin was stunned. She did not know what Yang Qing meant. Yang Qing, what do you want to do? Guoshuahua realized that the situation was not good. She said anxiously, Son, don't be rash. I know you can't take this lying down. I also know that you're very skilled, but Lu Min is not that simple. His grandfather is someone that even your grandfather might not be able to suppress. Yang Qing smiled. I don't care who he is or who his grandfather is. I'm relying on my own strength. I don't need the help of the Yang family. After that, Yang Qing said to Zhao Ting and Wang Jie, help Anshin and send my mom home. Don't worry about anything else. Go back to the company and continue working. Guoshuahua was not willing to let go. She wanted to persuade him, but Yang Qing did not want to waste any more time. There were some things that he did not have time to explain. Therefore, Yang Qing directly transferred a stream of vital energy into Guoshuahua's body, making Guoshuahua fall asleep. Then, he passed his mother to Anshin, who was still in a daze, and asked Anshin to support her. Take care of our mom and do what I say. Yang Qing said lightly. In a flash, he had already left the police station. Wang Jie and Zhao Ting were stunned on the spot. They did not expect that the usually jovial director was actually a legendary martial arts master. As for Anshin, other than worry, she felt sweet inside. What Yang Qing said was, our mom. Yang Cheng's figure appeared outside the police station. He walked to the side of the road and was about to take a taxi to Lu Min's destination. At this time, his phone finally vibrated. Yang Qing picked up the phone and Molin's voice came through. Your Majesty Pluto, I've found it. Lu Min, who is around 30 years old, is only the director of Zhonghai Radio and Television General Administration. The signal shows that this person is now heading to Zhonghai International Airport. He has booked a ticket to Yanjing, and he will take off in an hour. Airport. A cold light flashed in Yang Cheng's eyes. He sneered and said, got it? Keep an eye on his whereabouts and inform me if there are any changes. Just as Yang Qing was about to hang up, Molin suddenly said, Your Majesty Pluto, please allow me to say a few more words. Are you going to kill Lu Min? Yang Qing frowned. His subordinates rarely dared to ask him questions. What was wrong with Molin? Molin struggled a little and said, Please allow me to speak frankly. If Your Majesty Pluto stays in Huaxia, it will be very disadvantageous. Yang Qing narrowed his eyes and said, What do you want to say? I'm in a hurry. Molin also seemed to have thrown caution to the wind. He said, According to the information, Lu Min's father is the head of the Lu family in Yanjing. He is a core member of the Ministry of Culture. This is nothing, but his mother is the biological daughter of Li Mozhen, the head of the Li family, one of the 4 big families in Yanjing. Li Mozhen is the current vice premier of the State Council of Huaxia. He is an important figure in the political circle of Huaxia. Yang Qing frowned. He had heard from Tang Wan that the 4 big families in Yanjing were the Ning, Li, Yang, and Tang families. The Ning family was the most powerful, while the Tang family's head, Shang, was relatively weak. The Yang family had always stood strong because Yang Gongming did not fall. As for the Li family, he did not know much about them, nor did he have the mood to find out. Listening to Molin's words, it seemed that the Li family had more than just a vice premier. Otherwise, there was no reason for them to stop him. As expected, Molin continued, Although Li Moshen's position on the surface is the vice premier of the State Council, second only to Ning Guangyao of the Ning family. However, the real power that Li Mozhen wields is the director of the State Council of Huaxia. In terms of position, he is even higher than Cai Yunqing of the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade. It's just that the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade has autonomy. Moreover, the eldest grandson of the Li family, Li Dun, and Yan Buwen of the Yan family are known as the two kings of Yanjing. Li Dun controls almost two-thirds of the most elite special forces in Huaxia. Listening to Molin's continuous narration, Yang Cheng's heart finally moved a little. His face turned solemn. Director of the State Council of Yanjing? In other words, he was the head of spies. The most frightening thing about a place like the State Council was not how strong its military force was, but the information that it held was enough to ruin anyone's reputation. No matter how high one's position was, no matter how glorious one was, everyone made mistakes. It was hard to guarantee that there was a stain on one's record. The higher one stood, the more afraid they were of these stains being exposed. Li Mozhen had been in charge of the State Council of Huaxia for no less than 20 years. It was impossible for him to be so stable without any special means. For such a person, unless one did not provoke him, once he was angered, it was hard to guarantee that he would come up with information that would make the enemy unable to rise again forever. It could be said that in Yanjing, the rich and powerful would rather provoke Ning Guangyao. At most, they would just fight it out on the surface, and there would still be a chance of turning things around. However, they did not dare to provoke Li Mozhen, who had a large amount of information on the dark side. Fighting with the head of spies? You would lose before it even started. As for the eldest grandson of the Li family, Li Dun, he actually controlled more than half of the special forces in Huaxia at such a young age. He even held the trump card in his hand. Just like Yan Buwen of the Yan family, one was a young leader in the field of scientific research, and the other was a young leader in the field of special forces. That was why they were known as the Two Kings. Although spies and special forces were of no threat to Yang Qing, it did not mean that they were useless to the people around him. Lu Min was Li Mozhen's biological grandson. If he touched him, and the Li family did not react at all, then it would be humiliating. It would be better for him to voluntarily remove his name from the 4 major families of Yanjing. Therefore, if Yang Qing really killed Lu Min, the Lu family would not be able to fight back. The problem was that once the Li family made their move, even if they could not do anything to Yang Qing, it would be much easier to deal with the people around Yang Qing. Moreover, if Yang Qing really fought with the Li family until blood flowed like a river, it would be a huge disaster for Huaxia. The Security Bureau and the Special Forces would definitely be mobilized to fight against Yang Qing. If Yang Qing killed all these important people, the political situation and military deployment of Huaxia would definitely be in chaos. It would even attract the countries that were eyeing Huaxia covetously, which would give them a chance to take advantage of. At that time, Yang Qing would be no different from a sinner of Huaxia. What was the point of staying in Huaxia? What made Yang Qing even more hesitant was that since Li Mozhen was in charge of the Security Bureau, it was impossible for him not to know his identity. He must have already taken precautions against Yang Qing. If he acted rashly, if the higher-ups of Huaxia were in chaos, it would lead to a crisis for the country. He could not guarantee that the people from Hongmeng would not act again. That would be really troublesome. No wonder Guoshuahua said that they were people that even Yang Gongming might not be able to control. The Li family's grandfather and grandson were indeed not to be underestimated. Even if he wanted to act, he had to think of a foolproof plan. At this moment, far away from the road, 3 military jeeps sped towards where Yang Qing was. In the blink of an eye, they braked in front of Yang Qing. A few sturdy men in military uniforms got out of the car and lined up in front of Yang Qing. From the car in the middle, a burly man with a straight face got out. Who else could it be but Yang Pejuan? Chapter 558. Seeing Yang Qing's indifferent face, Yang Pejuan felt an indescribable bitterness in his heart. After a lot of investigations and seeing with his own eyes, he had a general understanding of Yang Cheng's identity and background. Although he didn't want to admit it, his eldest son, whom he thought he would never see again in this life, was indeed more important than him now. Moreover, if the Yang family wanted to continue to be one of the four big families after Yang Gongming's death, they might have to rely on Yang Cheng's help. Especially when he had lost the election, his father, Yang Gongming, had scolded him more than once for Yang Cheng. No matter how stupid Yang Pejuan was, he knew that Yang Cheng was very important to the Yang family. Of course, Yang Pejuan also thought that if it weren't for Yang Cheng's sudden appearance, he wouldn't have lost the election. Therefore, Yang Pejuan didn't want the relationship between him and Yang Cheng to worsen, but he couldn't put on a good face to Yang Cheng. When he went to find Guoshuahua, he was stopped by Yang Cheng at the door, which was a contradictory example. For half of his life, he had spent most of his time on how to make the Yang family glorious. Therefore, when he thought about the relationship between him and Yang Cheng, he thought about the value and interests behind a person, but he didn't think about how to treat his son as a father, let alone compensate Yang Cheng for his fatherly love. When he placed Yang Cheng in the orphanage, Yang Pejuan didn't think he did anything wrong. For the sake of the overall situation of the Yang family, he cut the Gordian knot and was selfless. It was this kind of thinking that only wanted to push himself to the right position that made Yang Pejuan unable to understand why his beloved wife would leave him. It had to be said that this was also the sorrow of this high-ranking military officer, a descendant of a large family. "Where are you going?" Yang Pejuan asked coldly as he stopped in front of Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng frowned. He stopped in his tracks and said indifferently, "Move. I've heard about it from your aunt." Yang Pejuan's gaze was solemn as he said, "For the sake of a mere merchant's daughter, you're going to kill someone so viciously. Don't you understand that the Liu family is so easily provoked? Do you know that behind them is one of the four great clans, the Li clan?" Yang Cheng was not interested in listening to this man's nonsense. He originally wanted to consider preparing some backup plans to deal with the possible counterattack of the Li family, but Yang Pejuan's cold and threatening words directly caused the scarlet in his eyes to surge. "The more you try to stop me, the more I want to kill you. You came at the right time. It saves me the trouble of stopping a taxi. The military license plate can also be used for speeding." Yang Cheng glanced at the military jeep behind the soldier and walked over. Yang Pejuan did not expect that Yang Cheng would not even reply to him, and even wanted to snatch the jeep to chase after them. He was instantly enraged and said with a dark face, "Unfilial son! How dare you? Do you want the Yang family to fall out with the Li family because of you?" Yang Cheng turned around abruptly. His eyes were filled with coldness and murderous intent. "Let me tell you, I have nothing to do with you. If you dare to say one more word, I will cripple one of your hands. If you say 2 more words, I will cripple both of your legs. If you say 3 more words, I will break your neck." Even though Yang Pejuan had seen bloody battles at the border, he had never seen someone look at him with such an extremely ferocious and gloomy gaze. It was as if he was standing under a gray sky filled with corpses, unable to find any signs of life, and despair emerged from the bottom of his heart. He did not know that if he was not Yang Cheng's biological father and involved too many people around Yang Cheng, his words just now would be enough for Yang Cheng to kill him. However, Yang Cheng's warning was obviously effective. Yang Pejuan stood there with a pale face and did not say a word. The soldiers were burning with anger. This young man was too arrogant, and they had to teach him a lesson on behalf of their leader, who knew that when Yang Cheng's gaze swept across them, everyone's hands went limp and they did not even have the strength to raise their guns, not to mention stopping Yang Cheng. When Yang Cheng walked past, the few of them subconsciously opened up a path for Yang Cheng to find a jeep and get in. He could only watch as the jeep started up and sped away. Yen Jing, the military compound where the Yang family resided. In the spacious back garden, green grass and flowers bloomed like a brocade. It was obvious that someone was diligently taking care of the garden. Yang Gongming, who was wearing an old-fashioned gray shirt and a pair of linen pants, was sitting on a rattan chair. He held the morning paper in his hand and wore a pair of presbyopic glasses as he carefully read the news from various fields. There was only a white porcelain cup beside the old man. The fragrant tea was faint and white steam rose from it. It was freshly brewed hot tea. The entire courtyard was quiet. Although the old man looked kind and amiable, and no one would feel pressured, everyone in the Yang residence knew that when Yang Gongming was quietly reading, no one but one person was allowed to disturb him. San Yang, an old woman with a face full of wrinkles, walked out from between the pillars of the courtyard. She carried a plate of fresh mung bean pastries and gently placed it on the table beside Yang Gongming. Yang Gongming put down the newspaper and smiled warmly at San Yang. "You've worked hard. Have a seat, I haven't talked to you for a while." "Master, don't you read the newspaper?" San Yang smiled warmly, the wrinkles on her face smoothed out. "Most of the things in the newspaper are fake. Whether I read it or not, it's just to pass the time." Yang Gongming put the newspaper aside and asked, "Tell me, what's going on outside recently? This old man doesn't go out all day, I can't really be a frog at the bottom of a well." San Yang nodded and sat on another rattan chair. In this courtyard, only she had the right to sit on the same level as Yang Gongming. There hasn't been much happening in Yanjing recently. After the election, the Yan family's momentum grew. Yan Qingtian is also considered a capable person, and he distributed the benefits to all parties. However, Ning Guangyao was re-elected as the premier, and the Ning family is still firmly in power. However, I heard that the eldest son of the Ning family, Ning Guodong, got into some trouble, and he's been staying at home all day. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's a rumor that he's suffering from some illness, and I didn't bother to look into it. The Ning family is considered to be at the peak of their power when it comes to Ning Guangyao's generation. I've met Ning Guodong a few years ago. This junior is not broad-minded enough, and he won't amount to much. I'm afraid that once Ning Guangyao falls, the Ning family will have no one to carry on. As the saying goes, prosperity leads to decline, and it's hard to guarantee that they'll be removed from the four great clans, Yang Gongming said leisurely. San Yang didn't comment on it, and continued with a smile. Speaking of juniors, the second son of the Yan family, Yan Bushue, was injured by young Master Chen for some trivial matters. Although he's recovered now, I heard that he's still plotting against young Master Chen. However, his elder brother, Yan Buwen, has suppressed the matter. Speaking of which, Yan Buwen does have some talent. Not only is he a capable person in terms of technology, but he's also a meticulous strategist, and knows himself as well as the enemy. Unfortunately, compared to Li Dun from the Li family, Yan Buwen's character is lacking. Yan Qingtian has a good grandson, but if he doesn't push the Yan family to the peak of glory, he'll definitely fall into a bottomless abyss. It all depends on the Yan family's luck. I like Li Dun more, but he's too fierce and lacks some flexibility. He's a talented general, not a commander. Otherwise, his future would be limitless. I don't know how that old fox Li Mozhen could raise such a contrasting grandson. Yang Gongming's lips curled into a smile, and he continued, "That brat Yang Qing is also restless. He destroyed the Xing family and caused trouble for that girl from the Kai family. Could it be that he wants to go after the Yin family as well?" San Yang smiled bitterly. Young Master Chen isn't someone who initiates trouble. Most of the trouble is caused by the women around him. In this aspect, he's very different from Master and young Master Pejuan. Yang Gongming laughed heartily. He naturally understood San Yang's meaning. The members of the Yang family, no matter how they behaved, were mostly infatuated with love. Whether it was him, Yang Pejuan, or his grandson Yang Lai, They were all devoted to only one woman. Only this eldest grandson, who was lost at a young age, had a string of peach blossoms, each of them an outstanding beauty. He didn't know if God knew that the Yang family had a small number of people for generations, giving birth to such an anomaly. From Yang Gongming's point of view, although having more women would affect the family's reputation, the current era was a far cry from his era. Back then, even getting pregnant before marriage was seen as a disgraceful act. In today's world, marriage mostly depended on whether the woman was pregnant or not. Marrying with a pregnant belly was a common occurrence. You're the son of a prominent family, and if you only love one woman for your entire life, others would think that you're pretending to be virtuous. If you keep more lovers, people would think that it's normal. Therefore, although Yang Gongming felt that Yang Qing was a little too much of a playboy, he didn't dislike it. Master, Sanyang has something that I'm not sure if I should say, Sanyang said hesitantly. Yang Gongming waved his hand. Between you and me, there's nothing that can't be said. Master, although young Master Chen is getting along well with young Madam, he doesn't acknowledge the relationship between Commander and young Master Lai. Under such circumstances, do you really want young Master Chen to inherit the family? Sanyang asked. Yang Gongming took a porcelain cup from the side, took a sip, put it down, and sighed. If he's willing, that's naturally the best. If he's unwilling, I can only settle for the next best thing, and let Pajuan inherit. Although Pajuan is too obsessed, we can only blame ourselves. The Yang family owes him too much. It's understandable that he doesn't want to come back. But I have an inexplicable feeling that this child will come back one day. Sanyang's narrowed eyes were filled with an unpredictable expression. Finally, she sighed softly. Sanyang will do my best to make Master's wish come true. Yang Qing shook his head. Sanyang, you've always said that everything in this world has its own principles, and it can't be forced. I don't expect everything to go my way, I just leave it to fate. Moreover, my body is still strong, I'm not in a hurry. At this moment, a servant anxiously ran over from a nearby doorway, holding a wireless phone in his hand. He said respectfully, Master, Miss suddenly called, and insisted that you answer it immediately. Yang Gongming was puzzled as to why the servant would suddenly run in without any regard for the rules. Once he heard that it was his daughter, he suddenly understood. He thought of Yang Jiu. She was also a troublemaker. He thought that she would have peace after marrying to Zhonghai, but for the past 20 years, she still called him every few days, either to flatter him or to ask for his help. It was only because she was his daughter that he indulged her a little. If Yang Pajuan dared to act like this, he would definitely give him a good kick. Picking up the phone, Yang Gongming said in a bad mood, Girl, what do you want from me again? Can't you let your old father worry less? On the other end of the phone, Yang Jiu said anxiously, Dad? This time, I'm really not looking for you for my own matters. It's your precious grandson, that brat Yang Qing, who's going crazy. Yang Qing? Yang Gongming immediately tensed up. From Yang Jiu's tone, he knew that the situation was not good, but he still said calmly, Tell me in detail, I'm listening. A minute later, Yang Gongming hung up and passed the phone to the servant, dismissing him. Although she was not close enough to listen to the phone, Sanyang seemed to hear everything clearly. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said, Master, I was just saying that young Master Chen is constantly causing trouble because of a woman. You really test whatever you say. Yang Gongming pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said in a low voice, This brat thinks that he's invincible just because he went on a killing spree in Europe and killed 2 feathered beasts. Li Mozhen is famous for being protective of his own people. His grandson is Li Moshen's precious daughter's flesh and blood. How can he be touched so easily? There's no time to lose. Li Mozhen already knows young Master Chen's identity, and he's also one of the few people who know about Hongming. He definitely won't do anything pointless. With his methods, if his grandson is really killed, he'll definitely purposely blow the matter up without a care in the world. The information in the Security Bureau is enough to stir up a storm in Yanjing. Whether it's to ally with other families to deal with young Master Chen, or to deal with our Yang family, it's enough to cause chaos in Huaxia. If that's the case, it'll be hard to guarantee that the Hongmeng emissary will be forced to deal with young Master Chen. After all, the Li family is the key to maintaining the political balance. It's better for this old woman to make a trip to Zhonghai. Sanyang stood up. Hongmeng emissary. Yang Gongming looked at the old woman with a complicated expression. What if you're seen by them? Sanyang lowered her head and smiled. I can hide for a while, but I can't hide forever. Young Master Chen already possesses those people's godhood, and his identity has already become a taboo in Hongmeng. It's a condition for Hongmeng's people to make a move. If it wasn't for the fact that young Master Chen cultivates the endless resolve restoration scripture at the same time and is close to that door, Hongmeng emissary would have killed him just based on the previous troubles. If he really causes turmoil in Huaxia's political situation, when that Hongmeng emissary makes a move, I'm afraid it'll be too late to save young Master Chen. But you, Yang Gongming wanted to say something else, but Sanyang stopped him. Master, there's no need to say anything else. I'm afraid Sanyang won't be able to make it in time if we delay any longer. All right. As soon as she finished speaking, Sanyang disappeared from the courtyard. There wasn't even a trace of her shadow left. It was as if she had never appeared in the first place. If Yang Qing was there to witness this scene, he would have turned pale with fright. Wasn't this the same supernatural power that the Hongmeng emissary, Ling Shuzi, used when they met at the seaside? The only difference was that Ling Shuzi's instantaneous movement was shorter, but this Sanyang's instantaneous movement was completely gone. Yang Gongming wasn't too surprised. He only turned his head and looked at the gray sky in the south. He sighed leisurely. His gaze was blurry, as if he was reminiscing and regretting something. Chapter 559. On the highway from Zhonghai to the airport, a modified military jeep's engine was sprinting at a speed of nearly 200 kilometers per hour, like a dark green bolt of lightning. Almost all the cars gave way in fear. This was a military car. No one would dare to do anything if it crashed into someone else's car. Yang Qing looked straight ahead expressionlessly. Racing was no longer a technical skill to him, it was just an instinctive control of the machinery. The car was like his own limbs. He didn't need to think at all to avoid everything and move forward in the most perfect route. In fact, the task of chasing after Lu Min could be left to the Sea Eagles, or to Qiangwei's Red Thorns Society. They could intercept Lu Min much earlier than he did, and killing Lu Min, who had no one to rely on, was as easy as blowing dust. However, Yang Qing still decided to do it himself. Lu Min wanted to touch his woman, and was also the culprit that put him in jail. Just based on these 2 points, Yang Qing didn't mind killing him himself. Moreover, now that he knew that Lu Min's background wasn't simple, Yang Qing didn't want the people around him to interfere. He would take care of everything himself. The speed of the jeep made the owners of the few cars on the highway dumbfounded. After entering the last bend of the airport road, the jeep did not slow down at all. It rushed forward at a speed of nearly 200 kilometers per hour. Some car owners thought that the driver of the jeep was crazy. Wasn't he courting death? However, they didn't expect that the jeep would enter at such a speed. The friction between the tires and the ground created sparks, and the angle was just right for the jeep to pass the corner without overturning. What an amazing driving skill! Everyone was shocked. As expected of a military driver, Huaxia's soldiers were really amazing. If Yang Qing knew what these guys were thinking, he would definitely be a little depressed. He didn't expect that they would make Yang Pejuan's army proud. The road ahead was less than 3 kilometers, and it was the departure station of Zhonghai International Airport. According to the report from the Sea Eagles, Lu Min should have just arrived at the airport. Yang Cheng's lips curled into a cold smile. This guy didn't even need to go through security, he could just die at the gate. As for whether the deaths would cause a riot, Yang Cheng wasn't stupid enough to let others discover that he was the one who did it. It couldn't be any easier to shatter an ordinary person's heart with true energy from a distance. At most, he would let Lu Min see him before he died. At the very least, he wouldn't have to turn into a ghost and have no one to take revenge on. But just when Yang Cheng felt that the matter was settled, an instinctive reaction suddenly flashed in his mind. Who is it? With Yang Cheng's reaction speed, he was still half a beat slower. The moment Yang Cheng sensed something powerful approaching, the speeding jeep disappeared from the highway. In a commercial vehicle behind the jeep, an elderly couple looked at each other. "Old man, was there a car in front of us just now?" the old lady asked uncertainly. The old man furrowed his white eyebrows. "I think I remember it too. Maybe it went to the front. The car was fast, and we might not have been paying attention." Although the old lady was a little puzzled, she didn't think too much of it. At that moment, Yang Cheng, who was sitting in the jeep, had an uncertain expression on his face. In that instant, the jeep had magically moved from the airport highway to a grassland under an overpass. This was the open area outside the airport, and about 1 kilometer away was the Zhonghai International Airport. It was the season of spring and summer, and this piece of land was full of wild grass that danced in the wind. The light green and dark green color made it look like the tide. The dark green camouflage jeep seemed to have blended into the entire grassland. If it wasn't for the heat coming from the engine, it would have seemed like the jeep had been parked there for a long time. Yang Chen's expression changed from alertness, to shock, to anger, and at this moment, he was at a loss of what to do. After a while, Yang Cheng came back to his senses. He realized that the jeep's engine had been destroyed by a force and had stopped working. The jeep could no longer move. Looking at where he was, at the airport in the distance, Yang Cheng was sure that the jeep had moved a few kilometers in the blink of an eye from the highway to where he was. This speed reminded Yang Cheng of the effect that a god could achieve through space folding after being unsealed. But the problem was, there were no fluctuations in space at all. How was this possible? What kind of power could do such a shocking thing without the help of the laws of space? Yang Cheng asked himself. It wouldn't have been a problem for him to carry the jeep and run all the way to this area before dropping it. But if he wanted to do what he did just now, it would be impossible to unseal it. Moreover, even if he unsealed it, he might not be able to move it so quickly. "Young Master Chen." A gentle voice came from behind the jeep. Yang Cheng turned around and looked out of the window. He didn't sense anyone behind him. The old woman, San Yang, who was still wearing the same plain old clothes, was looking at Yang Chen with a smile. Her face was filled with love, as if she was looking at her own grandson. She liked him sincerely. Yang Cheng recognized this woman because the person who always appeared with her left a deep impression on Yang Cheng. This was the old woman beside Yang Gongming. But every time he saw this old woman, Yang Cheng didn't pay much attention to her because she was too ordinary. But now that he thought about it, Yang Gongming was such an important person, yet he only brought her along. He should have known that she wasn't simple, but she shouldn't have been so overbearing. "Who are you?" Yang Cheng couldn't be bothered with Lu Min anymore. He didn't want to waste his breath. He couldn't believe that the person who did that was the old woman he didn't pay much attention to. How could there be such a person beside Yang Gongming? Could it be someone from Hongmeng? Yang Cheng's back was drenched in cold sweat. It wasn't because he was afraid, but because the situation was too sudden. He couldn't control his emotions. To Yang Cheng, who was used to having everything under control, this situation was very strange. "My surname is Yen, and my name is San Yang. I'm a servant in the Yang family who takes care of Master's daily life. If young Master Chen doesn't mind, you can call me Granny Yen." Yen San Yang smiled. "Yen San Yang?" Yang Qing had never heard of this name before. But it made sense. Among all the experts in the world, only Hua Xia himself didn't know about them. Last time, it was Ling Shuzi who was on duty in Hongmeng. This time, it was Yen Sanyang. What the hell? He had been the Duguchiobai overseas for many years, but this time, there were two people that he couldn't see through in a year. Why did you stop me? Did Yang Gongming ask you to come? Yang Qing frowned. He realized that his plan to kill Lu Min was going to be ruined. Yen Sanyang didn't admit nor deny it. She said, "Young Master Chen should call Master Grandpa. Of course, I understand if you can't do it now. As for why I stopped you, I'm sure young Master Chen knows very well. There's no need to ask." After getting out of the car, Yang Qing stood in front of Yen Sanyang and scratched his head. "You're quite well informed. I've just returned to the country and you're already here in Zhonghai to stop me. That old man is here too?" Yen Sanyang shook her head and smiled. "Master just received a call from Miss Jiu. That's why I rushed over. Master is still in Beijing." What? It had to be said that ever since he took over the position of God from the previous Pluto, Yang Qing had never been frightened. At most, he was just nervous. But now, Yen Sanyang's words had given him quite a fright. The distance between Beijing and Zhonghai, one north and one south, was more than 1,000 kilometers. Even if Yang Jieyu made the call at the time of the incident, Yen Sanyang wouldn't have been able to make it in time even if she took a plane from the Yang family's mansion. In other words, Yen Sanyang couldn't have used a vehicle to rush over. A terrifying thought popped up in Yang Chen's mind. Could it be that the kind old lady in front of him used the same method of moving the jeep? Did she travel through space alone from Beijing to Zhonghai in less than an hour, or even less than 10 minutes? Yang Qing was confident that if he was unsealed, he could travel 1,000 kilometers in an hour using the law of space. Any faster, and even if the law of space allowed it, his body wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, Yang Qing remembered that Ling Suzi from Hongmeng had also used a method of traveling through space that he couldn't understand. Could this woman really be related to Hongmeng? What was her background? Chapter 560. Yen Sanyang seemed to understand Yang Qing's shock. She smiled. "Young Master Chen, listen to this old woman's advice. I believe you've met the Hongmeng envoy. If you insist on making a move against Lu Min, you'll only be inviting trouble upon yourself." Yang Chen knew that the old woman in front of him wasn't just some random persuader. Solemnly, he said, "I know that Lu has a powerful grandfather as his backing, but does the Li clan have the authority to order people from Hongmeng around?" Sanyang shook her head and sighed. "No one can order around Hongmeng, not even the Li family. But young Master Chen, please think about it. The four great clans each have their own roles to ensure the stability of Hua Xia's politics and military. Under such a balance, no one would accept that a direct descendant of the Li family would be mercilessly killed just because he touched an ordinary businesswoman's daughter. Even if the Lu family was in the wrong, they wouldn't go so far as to sentence him to death. If the Li clan could accept the fact that the Li clan didn't even give them face and killed them just like that, then the Li clan would lose all their prestige. If Lord Li Mozhen couldn't even protect his own grandson, then how could the Li family be one of the four great clans? In the eyes of many in Yanjing, it's no secret that young Master Chen is the eldest grandson of the Yang family. So even if you don't think so, in their eyes, the Yang family is the one who started the war against the Li family. Yang Qing was silent. He knew that Yen Sanyang was right. Yang Gongming had met him twice in private, and Yang Pejuan had met him many times. Yang Jiu and Yuan Hui were already friends, and Guoshuahua was already living with him. Although he had no other relatives other than Guoshuahua, the outside world had long regarded him as a member of the Yang family. He had no choice but to admit it. Sanyang continued. The Li family has always kept a low profile. First, they are small in number, only slightly better than the Yang family. Second, the Li family is in charge of intelligence and special forces, so they have to keep a low profile. But that didn't mean that the Li family was a pushover. If the patriarch of the Li family, Vice Premier Li Mozhen, were to spread a large amount of negative information, it would only take a blink of an eye to cause a huge political upheaval. At that time, even if the Yang family is not afraid of the Li family, the Hongmeng envoy on duty will not sit idly by. Young Master Chen, perhaps you don't know this yourself, but you hold the deity position of that group of people, and have comprehended the power to use the law of space. This is already something that Huaxia Hongmeng disliked. If young Master Chen hadn't cultivated the endless resolve restoration scripture at the same time, he would have been in big trouble based on his previous actions. Yang Qing felt a chill in his heart. He frowned and said, "How do you know what cultivation technique I cultivate? Also, why would Hongmeng feel repulsed by a sovereign's divine throne?" Yen Sanyang was a little surprised, but she soon felt relieved. She said, "This endless resolve restoration scripture is the supreme art of Shu Mountain. It's not difficult to recognize. As for why you feel repulsed by it, it must be because the previous Hades and the other sovereigns didn't tell you about it. I took over the divine throne in a hurry. Other than some simple explanations and rules, I don't know much about the past of the god. Could it be that there's a conflict between Huaxia's Hongmeng and the gods of the West?" Yang Qing guessed. Yen Sanyang's squinted eyes suddenly revealed a hint of arrogance. She shook her head and smiled. "Conflict? That's impossible. Young Master Chen, it's not that I'm talking nonsense. In the eyes of the people of Hongmeng, the so-called gods are just a group of mutants. They can't even be considered as humans. They aren't even on the same level. How could there be a conflict?" "What?" Yang Qing's eyes widened. This was the first time he heard someone say that the high and mighty gods were not even considered as humans? Yen Sanyang hurriedly waved her hand. "This is related to some ancient history that few people know about. I only found out about it from my master. Of course, even though young Master Chen is one of the so-called sovereigns, he's still a real human. He's not a mutant. What I'm talking about are the remaining 11 sovereigns who have lived since ancient times. The people of the world are foolish enough to call them God. It's a joke." Looking at Sanyang's expression that didn't look like she was joking, Yang Chen suddenly realized that there seemed to be a shocking secret that he had been keeping hidden. At that moment, Yang Cheng's phone vibrated. Yang Cheng's thoughts were interrupted. He picked up the phone and saw that it was a call from Molin. He glanced at Sanyang and saw that the old woman had no objections. Only then did Yang Qing pick up the phone. Subconsciously, Yang Qing had already determined that he no longer had the chance to kill Lu Min. Even if he unsealed himself, he might not be a match for Yen Sanyang. Just like Ling Shuzi, when his cultivation reached a certain level, he could sense that he was no match for them. "Molin, what's the matter?" Yang Qing asked calmly. Molin's tone was complicated. "Your Majesty Pluto, it's very strange. That Lu Min is dead." Yang Qing was shocked. Dead? Wasn't he chatting with Yen Sanyang? How did he die while he wasn't paying attention? Yen Sanyang, who was standing not far away, could clearly hear it as well. Her aged eyes flashed with a rare hint of fierceness. "We don't know what exactly happened. After all, it wasn't a close-up surveillance. We only know that Lu Min was injected with an acute toxin not long after he entered the airport. He spat out black blood and lost his chance to be resuscitated. If I'm not wrong, that toxin reaction should be from the Lebanese spider used by Israel's Mossad. The culprit is obviously trying to frame you, Your Majesty," Molin said angrily. Almost all the Secret Service organizations in the world knew that there were only two forces in the world that could mobilize Israel's Mossad. One was Israel itself. The other was Yang Qing. Yang Qing's right-hand man, Maekdon, was also a high-ranking leader of Mossad. Yang Qing hung up the phone with a gloomy expression. He couldn't guess who was the culprit, but there was no doubt that the culprit's intention was not simple. Yen Sanyang pondered for a moment before saying, "This is fate. We thought we could stop this disaster, but we miscalculated and gave the culprit an opportunity. Young Master Chen, now you should believe that there are turbulent undercurrents under the surface of this seemingly calm sea." Yang Cheng clenched his fists tightly. He had foolishly become the scapegoat for someone else's murder. How could he not be angry? Even if someone with a discerning eye could tell that someone was deliberately stirring up trouble to incite a conflict between the Yang family and the Li family, his murderous intent to kill Lu Min had already happened. Furthermore, he had the ability to assassinate Lu Min, so there was no way he could explain himself. However, Yang Chen wasn't a brat who hadn't seen the world before. Very quickly, his strong mental fortitude allowed him to calm down. He knew that since this had happened, the enemy was in the dark while he was out in the open. Thus, putting Lu Min's matter aside, Yang Chen raised his head and asked humbly, "Granny Yen, I wonder if you could tell me about the ancient history you mentioned, if I am lucky enough to understand it." Yen Sanyang's eyes brightened. She secretly praised Yang Cheng's temperament. When she heard Yang Cheng calling her Granny Yen, she was even happier. She smiled kindly and said, "If young Master Chen wants to hear about it, I'm willing to tell you. This is something that you should know. It's just that those mutants didn't tell you about it because of their inferiority complex." Yang Cheng thought to himself, "Look at how happy you are. Isn't it just calling you Granny? You deserve such a title at your age. Moreover, you're still serving Yang Gongming at such an old age. You might have some kind of relationship with him. If it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to squeeze all the **T history out of you, I wouldn't even bother talking to you. Lu Min was already dead. What's the point of me staying in this godforsaken place? I'm so unlucky this morning. I don't know how high this old woman's cultivation base is. She scared me so much. But no matter what, she should have broken through the Xiantian full cycle like Ling Shuzi. I don't know when I can reach that level. I can travel through space without using my divine power. What a mysterious realm this was. If Yen Sanyang knew that Yang Cheng's mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts, she would have been petrified. However, she was still very satisfied with this young man. You see, as long as you talk nicely, even the most stubborn child will listen to you. After a moment of silence, Yen Sanyang began to narrate, "Young Master Chen, you should know where the gods of the West originated from, right?" Yang Qing thought for a moment and said, "If I'm talking about the origin, it should be Mount Olympus in Greece. Although most of the myths and legends that people know of have been tampered with, at least the names of places and people's lives are not wrong." Yen Sanyang nodded and said, "Young Master Chen, do you know where the real Mount Olympus is?" Chapter 561. The real Mount Olympus? Yang Qing was taken aback. What did she mean? Could it be that Mount Olympus was real or fake? However, Yang Qing knew that Yen Sanyang must have her reasons for asking this question. Thus, Yang Cheng's mind began to search for any other mountain with the same name other than Mount Olympus in Greece. Yang Qing had a map of the world in his mind, so he knew all the mountains in the world. However, he couldn't find a second Mount Olympus. He asked, "Granny Yen, are you talking about a small mountain somewhere? How would I know?" Yen Sanyang smiled playfully. She raised a finger and pointed to the sky. Yang Chen raised his head and looked at the gray sky. He couldn't see the sun. "Sky? What do you mean?" But the next moment, Yang Chen's mind jolted and he blurted out, "Are you talking about Mount Olympus on Mars?" "That's right," Yen Sanyang nodded and smiled. Yang Chen opened his mouth and stood there dumbly. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Anyone who was familiar with astronomy would know that there was another mountain with the same name in the solar system other than Mount Olympus on Earth. Mount Olympus on Mars was the largest volcano in the solar system to date. It looked like a giant shield, its base area larger than the United Kingdom on Earth, and its height was 3 times that of Mount Everest. Granny Yin, don't tell me that the gods of Mount Olympus actually came from Mount Olympus on Mars. Yang Qing shook his head and sighed. If that's the case, wouldn't they be aliens? Aliens? Yen Sanyang nodded. That's a good term, but the cultivators of Huaxia are used to calling them mutants. Yang Qing looked at Yen Sanyang's calm expression and was speechless. After a long while, he said with difficulty, Are they really from Mars? The gods are Martians? Yang Qing felt like he had entered a sci-fi movie. Why was everything so mysterious? But thinking about it, the things that had happened to him were even more mysterious than a sci-fi movie, so why would he care if the gods were Martians? Yen Sanyang saw the strange expression on Yang Qing's face and knew that it was difficult for Yang Qing to accept it. She sighed and shook her head. Then, she slowly told him about the ancient history that she had learned from her master. As early as tens of thousands of years ago, the most primitive human beings on Earth were still in a period where their spiritual wisdom had yet to develop. They were the so-called primitive people. On the other hand, in Huaxia's domain, there were some people who might have encountered some special opportunities and gained intelligence early on. Moreover, in the land that was full of danger, they comprehended the natural laws of the world and created a cultivation path that allowed them to become more and more powerful. Perhaps it was due to the people of different places, or perhaps it was due to luck. Just like that, a small group of humans began to write the history of civilization in the land of Huaxia. To put it simply, these people were the legendary immortals and gods in the civilization of Huaxia. There were many versions of the story, and the characters were different, but in the end they were the same group of people. The earliest ancestors of Huaxia followed the heavenly Tao and focused on cultivation. They did not interfere with the development of other primitive societies. To them, there must be a special reason for the arrangement of the heavens. As long as they worked hard to find the root of the Tao, they would naturally understand the meaning of their existence one day. After a long period of time, after thousands of years, this group of people finally saw a strange change in the heavens and earth. At that time, the atmosphere of Earth suddenly fell like a meteor shower. Countless colorful light spots fell from the sky. These light spots were scattered all over the world. Most of them fell on the Eurasian plate, which had the most pleasant climate. The ancestors of Huaxia did not know what these light spots were. It was only after some light spots were found in the land of Huaxia that the ancestors realized that these light spots were living beings who wore strange clothes and looked similar to the humans on Earth. These people were extremely arrogant and seemed to look down on the primitive humans on Earth. When the primitive humans saw these people descending from the sky, they immediately worshipped them as gods. In fact, they did not know what gods were. They only instinctively feared the heavens, so they also feared the people who descended from the sky. However, this group of extraterrestrial visitors was extremely disgusted with the primitive humans on Earth. After discovering that the primitive humans had extremely low intelligence, they seemed to feel that they were of no use to them. So, they began to wantonly slaughter everywhere. They would rather keep animals alive than to keep primitive humans alive. After all, the reproduction ability of animals was stronger than that of humans. In their eyes, it was more worthwhile to keep animals as pets, while humans were inferior races that wasted food. Seeing this group of extraterrestrial visitors in the land of Huaxia slaughtering their own people, the ancestors of Huaxia who had retreated from the world were finally enraged. They had cultivated for more than 1,000 years and were extraordinary figures who had mastered the power of heaven and earth. A group of accomplished cultivators, once they attacked, they slaughtered the originally arrogant alien races. In the end, they killed so many of them that they trembled with fear. Some died, some fled, and all of them rolled out of the land of Huaxia. The ancestors of Huaxia also discovered that this group of alien races had some tricks up their sleeve. They could actually manipulate parallel spaces. Moreover, after their physical bodies were destroyed, they could use their divine senses to transfer to a kind of magical space orbit. If they were not mistaken, this should be a special ability that allowed them to gather their strength and be reborn again. However, compared to this group of ancestors of Huaxia, the abilities of these alien races were child's play. After all, the ancestors of Huaxia had comprehended the origin of Tao, while these alien races could only use the form of power between heaven and earth. There was a huge difference in power between them. After discovering the cruel and evil acts of these alien races against the humans on earth, the ancestors of Huaxia believed that this was the intention of heaven to give them early spiritual wisdom and that they should do their duty to protect the creatures on earth. As a result, the cultivators of Huaxia scattered all over the world and killed all the extraterrestrial visitors with the momentum of heavenly thunder. In the end, the most powerful leaders of this group of alien visitors compromised in fear. They led the remaining members of their race and begged the ancestors of Huaxia to spare their lives. According to them, their own planet was actually the red planet that was close to Earth. However, it had been hit by a destructive celestial body and could no longer survive on it. Therefore, they had no choice but to use their own space transmission ability to come to Earth and migrate. In fact, these people who arrived on Earth were already the most powerful group of people on Mars. Their ability to manipulate space was the most powerful, which was why they had the opportunity to travel all the way to Earth. Many of them could not hold on midway, and were directly destroyed by the radiation in the universe. Knowing that this group of people were also pitiful victims whose homes had been destroyed, the ancestors of Huaxia felt that it was not right to kill them all. After all, that was too cruel and against the harmony of heaven. Therefore, the ancestors of Huaxia warned this group of alien mutants not to harm humans anymore. They were not allowed to set foot on the land of Huaxia, or their race would be destroyed. Seeing that this group of mutants had a higher level of civilization, they left them in other parts of the world and asked them to help primitive humans around the world. Although they could not be considered as protectors, they were still to promote the evolution of civilization at critical times. After the group of mutants agreed in fear, they obediently found a mountain in Europe and named it after the mountain in their hometown, Mount Olympus. Their remaining 12 strongest mutant leaders were the characters from the beginning of Western mythology. As these mutants began to help humans reproduce, human intelligence gradually increased, and they began to worship them. Gradually, the term God came into being. Naturally, this was limited to those outside of Huaxia. Within the territory of Huaxia, those ancestors were the legendary celestial beings. At first, this group of mutants felt that it was a gift from the heavens to have a place to live. After all, as long as they did not invade the territory of Huaxia, the terrifying cultivators would not do anything to them. However, gradually, this group of mutants discovered that on this planet, they did not know if there was a subtle environmental difference, but the success rate of their reproduction was shockingly low. After a few decades, only a few offspring were born. Slowly, the mutants continued to think of ways to give birth, but they could not give birth to more children. Moreover, most of them could not reproduce anymore. They finally realized that their race was on the verge of extinction. It was impossible to return to Mars. Mars was uninhabitable. If they wanted to change to another planet, the nearest habitable planet from Earth was too far away. Fortunately, they discovered that, in addition to manipulating parallel space, they had another special talent, reincarnation, which could be used on humans on Earth. This discovery made them happy and worried at the same time. They were happy because among them, the stronger ones, especially those who were already ranked as gods, could use their extremely powerful mental strength, also known as divine sense, to continuously awaken from ordinary humans through reincarnation. The worry was that this reincarnation was not infinite. Among them, some of the weaker ones might not have enough mental strength to reincarnate after 2 or 3 times of reincarnation. What worried them even more was that this method of reincarnation was equivalent to killing ordinary humans. This was because every time they reincarnated, when the gods awakened, the human's consciousness would be replaced. In other words, the original human would no longer exist, leaving behind only a shell. In the end, the gods of Mount Olympus chose to come to the territory of Huaxia and begged the cultivators of Huaxia to allow them to reincarnate without shame. They also promised that when they awakened, they would work harder to promote the development of human civilization on Earth. The ancestors of Huaxia saw that the primitive human civilization had made great progress in the past few decades and knew that what they said was true. After some consideration, they felt that the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. For most primitive people, these mutants were of great value. Therefore, the ancestors of Huaxia allowed this group of mutants to reincarnate on the continent outside of Huaxia's territory. However, at the same time, in order to restrict this group of people from manipulating parallel space, the ancestors of Huaxia had to abide by the Treaty of the Gods. After all, if this group of mutants reincarnated in human society and used the power of the laws of space to kill some of their opponents, it would really go against the balance of the world and would cause panic among humans on Earth. Therefore, from then on, when the gods fought with non-god humans, they were not allowed to unseal, which was enforced by the gods. A small number of gods who broke the treaty were killed by the ancestors of Huaxia. After that, no one dared to break this rule. With the long passage of time and the vicissitudes of life, mankind gradually gained enough wisdom under the leadership of many astounding geniuses and entered the history of human civilization that flourished. Of course, in order to commemorate the lost civilization on Mars, the mutants also left many traces in history. For example, the pyramids that were similar to their houses on Mars, and the original name of Mount Olympus on Mars. This also caused many relics in the world to seem like they were not built by ancient humans. And these mutants gradually decreased generation after generation. After reincarnation, only the 12 gods with absolute power were left to this day. The legend of the gods gradually became a legend. As for the ancestors of Huaxia who had been suppressing them, they had disappeared in the long river of history like a legend. However, the organization, Hongmeng, had been passed down since ancient times. Some cultivators who had reached the Khanate full circle would join the organization after they had transcended the mortal world and lived in seclusion. However, in order to continue the responsibility of protecting their homeland, there would be a Hongmeng ambassador every 5 years to patrol the land of China. Firstly, it was to prevent Huaxia from being destroyed. Secondly, as long as the 12 gods were alive, they needed to keep them in check. This was to prevent the remaining 12 people from thinking that no one in the world could restrain them and have any ulterior motive. Listening to Yen Sanyang's intermittent narration of this dusty history, Yang Cheng's heart went from shock to disbelief. Then, it gradually became clear and he understood. Finally, he had a rough idea of what was going on and could almost accept it. No wonder the previous Pluto and the other gods never mentioned this part of history. They were the most powerful people who came to Earth, but it could also be said that they were the most useless people in the past tens of thousands of years. This was simply the history of the gods' humiliation. They could only watch as their people declined generation by generation, but they could do nothing about it. Moreover, they were completely powerless to resist Hongmeng. They could only hide outside of Huaxia's territory. They had to avoid Huaxia no matter what they did, and they did not dare to simply fight. Yang Chen more or less understood why these guys were living such ridiculous lives. Kristen was considered to be a singer, Apollo and Diana were directly involved in making up stories, and Ares was like a madman looking for people to pick a fight with, looking for trouble for no reason at all. Anyone who had lived for tens of thousands of years would have no desire to continue living as they watched their own kind gradually dwindle until there were only a few old farts left. They had enjoyed everything they could and were tired of everything else. That was the feeling of living a life worse than death. For example, Apollo and his sister seemed to be carefree all day, but how could Yang Qing not see that they had no other thoughts in their hearts? That was why they had such a bad taste to provoke criticism from others. The previous Pluto formed zero and killed countless people. However, killing people was probably not his main goal. He only wanted to train a successor among the killers so that he could be free. Although the successor could no longer be a real Martian, at least he managed to gather the 12 spots of the prime gods. It could be considered a final explanation to the other 11 people who continued the history of this race. However, if it wasn't for the help of Godstone, Yang Chen wouldn't have had the opportunity to understand the manipulation of parallel space and the reincarnation technique. Speaking of which, why didn't Yen Sanyang mention anything about Godstone? Yang Qing thought about it in confusion. He looked at Yen Sanyang, who was immersed in her memories, and said, "Granny Yen, I can accept the ancient history that you mentioned. However, I still have a question. Since the remaining 12 prime gods are already numb to reincarnation, why are they still fighting for Godstone? I have a rough understanding of the use of Godstone. According to Aphrodite and Apollo, Athena, Ares, and the rest had fought for God's stone before. Could it be that God's stone can resurrect their people?" Yen Sanyang seemed to have expected this question from Yang Qing. She said, "It's hard for me to answer this question. What I know is what I heard from Master. At the end of the day, I'm not from Hongmeng. God's stone is a very special item in this world. The person who first discovered it is no longer aware of it. If it's that important, Hongmeng wouldn't have let it fall into the hands of the mutants. Unless Hongmeng doesn't know the true use of God's stone, or Hongmeng doesn't think that it's a threat." "You're not from Hongmeng?" Yang Qing was puzzled. "Granny Yen, didn't you say that I would have to join Hongmeng after I reach the Khanate full cycle? With your cultivation, you should have already taken that step." Yen Sanyang smiled bitterly. "Young Master Chen, there's a reason for this. It's not convenient for me to talk about it now. I've said most of what I need to say." After saying so much, Sanyang only wanted young Master Chen to know that apart from Huaxia, no one would dare to provoke the power of a master deity. However, within Huaxia's territory, it's best not to use it if possible. If not for the fact that the Hongmeng emissary isn't someone who would easily make a move, it's only a matter of time before we attract trouble. Yang Qing naturally understood the crux of the matter, and believed that Sanyang was speaking the truth. As of now, he was definitely not Sanyang's match. According to Sanyang, after reaching the Khanate full cycle, even if a master deity used the reincarnation technique, he would still be destroyed by someone of that level. If he really attracted Huaxia's attention, wouldn't his life be in danger? Although he wasn't afraid of death, he was still young and had so many women. How could he bear to die so easily? But after living for more than 20 years, when had he ever felt so pressured? He wanted to kill, but he was afraid of provoking others. It was truly suffocating. Yang Qing was irritated. He wanted to ask Sanyang if there was any limit to how far Hongmeng could go, so that he could do something within their tolerance. However, he suddenly froze. Why did he have to avoid them? At the end of the day, Hongmeng was still a human, and so was he. Didn't they just surpass the Khanate full cycle? Why couldn't he surpass it? Not to mention surpassing the Khanate full cycle, if the Hongmeng people bullied him with their numbers, he would just be stronger than all of them. He didn't believe that the people of Hongmeng were the highest level. Since young, Yang Qing, have lived in a world where the strong preyed on the weak. When have I, Yang Qing, ever been afraid of anyone? Why am I cowering and thinking of hiding this time? When he thought of this, Yang Qing's eyes lit up. He looked at Sanyang's skinny and aged body with a sneaky glint in his eyes. He chuckled. "Grandma Yen, I have something I'd like to ask." Chapter 562. Yen Sanyang suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. Yang Qing was acting like an honest man just a moment ago. Why was he suddenly acting like a black-hearted peddler trying to deceive her? If young Master Chen has any questions, I'll tell you everything I know. Yen Sanyang was unperturbed. At her age, there were very few things she couldn't see through. Yang Qing pondered for a moment before asking, Granny Yan's cultivation must have crossed the threshold of Xiantian full cycle and reached a whole new level. What I want to ask is about that threshold. How do we cross it? Yen Sanyang was about to say something, but Yang Chen quickly waved his hand to stop her, indicating that he wasn't done yet. I know. I'm an experienced person after all. I know that Granny Yen will surely say that when one's cultivation has reached a realm like ours, wanting to cross that threshold isn't something that can be done with a fixed method, right? Yen Sanyang nodded in satisfaction and smiled. That's right. That's what I wanted to say. If you understand it, then you understand it. If you don't, then there's no point in talking about it. What the hell? This again. Back then, the drunkard Song Tianxing had said this and almost killed him to understand the 9th level, rebirth. Now, Yen Sanyang was saying the same thing. Do you experts only know how to say one thing? While Yang Qing was cursing in his heart, he smiled and said, I don't expect Granny Yen to teach me anything. But I was thinking that since it's a rare opportunity to ask for guidance, why don't you tell me about your enlightenment in cultivation? Even if everyone's enlightenment is different, it might be of some help to me. Yen Sanyang was speechless. She didn't expect Yang Qing to want to listen to these things. She knew that enlightenment was illusory, and it wouldn't be of much use to him even if he told her about it. After all, it was a mysterious thing that couldn't even be described with words. What was the point of talking about enlightenment? But looking at the hopeful look on Yang Qing's face, Yen Sanyang began to ponder. She naturally knew that Yang Qing clearly knew that the path of enlightenment could not be forced. Yet, he still asked her this question because he wanted to increase his strength so that he would not be afraid of Hongmeng. But how could she not hope that Yang Qing would have the ability to protect himself? Especially when she found out that the Lu family's boy was assassinated by someone, she felt that even if Yang Qing didn't get involved in this mess, there would still be people looking for trouble with him. If Yang Qing could really take that step, even if he attracted Hongmeng's people at a critical moment, Hongmeng wouldn't really do anything to him. But, how can I help him? Yang Qin saw that Yen Sanyang was deep in thought. He didn't say anything. He stood there quietly, waiting for her answer. Just like that, the two of them stood on the empty grassland. A cool breeze blew through the grass, bringing with it a trace of coolness. At the same time, they could hear the roar of the airport in the distance. After a long time, Yen Sanyang suddenly raised her head. After a moment of hesitation, she raised her right hand and pointed her index finger in the direction of Yang Qing. Drawing an arc in the air, Yang Qing was stunned. To his surprise, Yen Sanyang had drawn a circle around him with an exquisite technique. He didn't know what form of energy she was using. This circle was formed by flattening the surrounding grass. Yang Qing stood in the circle, looking left and right. But Yen Sanyang wasn't done yet. She drew another line with her finger. Not far away from Yang Qin, another circle with the exact same grass was drawn out. Yen Sanyang finished her drawing and frowned. Young Master Qin, this is all I can do. Yang Qing's mouth twitched. Motherf asterisk Ker, old Granny Sanyang, are you trying to trick me? Do you think you're some old man with the surname Deng? You drew one more circle than him, one around me and one not, and you're telling me that it's done? But your method of drawing circles was superb. I didn't even feel any inner chi or ripples in the air, yet you were able to complete it without anyone noticing. Yen Sanyang seemed to know that Yang Qing didn't understand. She shook her head and sighed bitterly. To be honest, these two circles are the clearest way I can think of to convey my understanding. But I can't say it. I really don't know how to describe it. Young Master Qin, I can't guarantee that these two circles will be of use to you. If you can't see anything special about them, then just think of it as a moment of confusion. Sigh. Yang Qing was on the verge of tears. Please don't sigh. Why does it make me feel even more hopeless? Yen Sanyang looked at Yang Qing's dejected expression and felt embarrassed to stay here any longer. She said, Young Master Chen, if you're free, come back to Beijing and visit Master. Master misses you very much. No matter how many estrangements and conflicts there are, they can't resist the burning connection of blood. I hope young Master Chen can return to your roots soon. I'll take my leave now. Yen Sanyang's figure disappeared into thin air without waiting for Yang Qing to say anything. Yang Qing's face was full of bitterness. Although he had experienced the huge leap from the 8th to the 9th level of the Endless Resolve Restoration Scripture, Yang Qing knew that there would be a qualitative leap at this level. Every level of enlightenment would be a world of difference. But seeing how Yen Sanyang could come and go as she pleased without him feeling anything, it would be bullshit to say that it didn't affect Yang Qing at all. Yang Qing didn't think too much about it. He lowered his head and looked at the 1-meter-wide circle around him. He then looked at another circle a few meters away that was almost identical. He frowned. 2 circles? What does that mean? In the Lin family's bungalow, the atmosphere in Guoshuehua's room on the 2nd floor was stifling. Guoshuehua, who had already woken up, sat on the bed. Her eyes were red and lifeless, and her face was full of fatigue. Anshin, who looked worried and anxious, stood beside Guoshuehua's bed. She didn't say a word, just like a statue. At this moment, Mother Wang entered the room with a glass of water. She walked to Guoshuehua's bedside and handed the glass to her. She said with concern, Shuehua, drink some warm water. It will help you calm down. I believe young master will be fine. Although Mother Wang and Guoshuehua were slightly apart in age, they were like sisters after spending so much time together. They even called each other by their names in private. When Anshin sent Guoshuehua home with Wang Jie and Zhao Ting's help, Mother Wang was quite frightened. After listening to Anshin's brief explanation, Mother Wang only knew that such a big thing had happened in the family. But she had been through many dangers before, so she wasn't scared. Guoshuehua reluctantly took the glass and smiled bitterly. Yulan, you know how important Yang Qing is to me. I don't know how he is now. If something really happens to him, the consequences, I don't even dare to think about it. Mother Wang didn't know much about the fights between the higher-ups. She could only sigh and try her best to comfort Guoshuehua not to think too much about it. She would definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessing. At this moment, Guoshuehua's phone rang. Guoshuehua was shocked. She immediately stood up and took the phone. It was Yang Jieyu. Hello Jieyu, how is Yang Qing? Guoshuehua asked anxiously. Her usual gentle and elegant temperament was long gone. Yang Jieyu didn't beat around the bush. She said directly, Sister-in-law, things are more complicated than we thought. The good news is that Yang Qing didn't arrive at the airport, so he didn't kill Lu Min. But the bad news is, Lu Min is still dead. What? Guoshuehua was stupefied. She didn't understand what was going on. Yang Jieyu explained, I just heard from our Yuan family's informant that Lu Min died from poisoning at the airport. It said that the poison was probably a special poison from a foreign spy organization. Wei and I guessed that the enemy was targeting Yang Qing. Although Yang Qing didn't arrive at the airport, many forces knew that Yang Qing was most likely the one who ordered his men to kill Lu Min with that poison. How could this be? Guoshuehua was stunned. Although she was happy to hear that her son was fine, she felt her heart sink when she realized that Yang Qing had been plotted against. Anshin saw Guoshuehua's dazed expression. She suppressed her fear and clenched her teeth. She went forward and gently grabbed one of Guoshuehua's hands. She tightened her grip and opened her beautiful eyes. She said seriously, Auntie, you have to pull yourself together. Yang Qing is so powerful. He'll definitely be fine. Although these words sounded hollow and weak, Guoshuehua, who was feeling down, obviously needed this kind of encouragement. Guoshuhua raised her head and looked at Anshin, who had a firm and unwavering expression. She finally reached out her other hand and patted the back of Anshin's hand. She smiled warmly and said, "Thank you, Anshin." Mother Wang saw this scene. She didn't say anything, but a trace of worry flashed through her eyes. Another outstanding girl. When would this young miss of hers be able to win the favor of her mother-in-law like these girls? Rumble! Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the gloomy sky. The sky had been gray since the beginning of the morning. Finally, after the deafening thunder, it started to rain heavily on the grassland far away from the airport. The pouring rain mixed with the flashes of lightning and thunder made this piece of land look like it was in the middle of a storm. A purplish-blue lightning flashed across the sky and cut through the rain cloud. The light shone on the grassland and the figure who was sitting lazily. Yang Qing was sitting casually on the grassland. He let the rain fall on his body, wet his hair, soak his clothes, and let the raindrops drip from his head and face onto the grassland. He could have used his qi to prevent the rain from touching him, but Yang Qing didn't do that, because he had forgotten. After Yen Sanyang left, Yang Qing sat casually on the grassland. Since Lu Min was dead, he didn't have anything else to do for the time being. He sat down and thought about what the two circles meant. It had been a long time since he thought about cultivation. However, there were many things that didn't mean that he wouldn't learn after a long time. Instead, to Yang Qing, it was natural for him to understand some things carefully. Soon, Yang Qing entered a state where he forgot everything around him. He didn't know that there was thunder and lightning outside, nor did he know that his body was drenched. In Yang Qing's eyes and mind there was nothing else other than the two circles, within the circle, outside the circle, inside the circle, outside the circle. Yang Qing kept murmuring as if he was sleep-talking. It seemed like he was doing it on purpose, but it also seemed like he was instinctively telling himself something. Time ticked by. Yang Qing's facial expression remained lifeless. He didn't even blink once. While Yang Qing was immersed in his own world, Guoshuhua and the others were anxious. It went from noon to the afternoon and night. The rain had stopped. Occasionally, the sound of raindrops could be heard from the eaves outside. It made the house even more quiet. Mother Wang made some simple dishes and brought them to the living room. However, Guoshuhua and Anshin sat on the sofa and stared at the clock on the wall. They didn't have the appetite to eat. Mother Wang looked at the two of them who were lost in thought. She frowned and shook her head. When they found out that Yang Qing didn't go to the airport, Yang Jiyu and her husband helped Guoshuhua to search for Yang Qing in Zhonghai. They tried their best to contact Yang Qing, but they couldn't get through to Yang Qing's phone at all. If they were right, his phone should be turned off or out of battery. As for the jeep that Yang Qing drove, the last report said that it appeared near the airport highway. However, they couldn't find where the car was parked even after a group of people secretly searched for it. In an instant, Yang Qing disappeared into thin air. Who would have guessed that Yang Qing was actually sitting in the middle of the grassland outside the airport? He had no intention of hiding from anyone. Who would have guessed that it wasn't that Yang Qing didn't want to go home, but that he was suddenly immersed in some kind of thoughts and forgot about it? It wasn't until late at night that Guoshuhua came back to her senses. She realized that Anshin was sleepily waiting for Yang Qing by the side. She couldn't help but feel a sense of pity. Even though she knew that this child didn't have a proper relationship and that this house belonged to her daughter-in-law, Guoshuhua couldn't bear to send Anshin home so late at night to sleep. Anshin, it's already midnight. You must be tired today. Go to bed early. Guoshuhua advised with a bitter smile. Anshin shook her head. I'm worried. Silly girl, you're still advising Auntie to have confidence in Yang Qing. Are you lying to Auntie? Guoshuhua sighed and went forward to hold Anshin's hand. Forget it. Go upstairs with Auntie. Yang Qing's room is empty. You can sleep in his room. Auntie will sleep too. We all believe in Yang Qing, okay? This time, Anshin couldn't refuse. Guoshuahua actually wanted her to sleep in Yang Cheng's room as a mistress. If she still refused, she would be letting down the love that Guoshuahua had for her. Although she couldn't fall asleep, she still nodded obediently. That night, Zhonghai was filled with the Yuan family's disciples and some of the Jiangnan military scouts searching for traces of Yang Qing. Coincidentally, the heavy rain blocked most of their vision. Moreover, because their target was the jeep, this group of people didn't think of searching in the wilderness. Coincidentally, they missed Yang Qing, who was right in front of them. When dawn came, Yang Qing, who was sitting on the grass, finally came back to his senses. He was like a statue that had been petrified for a long time. He turned his head stiffly and looked around. Then, he looked at his wet and cold body. Only then did he realize that it had rained and that half of his clothes had dried up after one night. After a few bitter laughs, Yang Qing scratched his wet hair that was stuck with dew. At this moment, he definitely looked like a homeless person. After a night of meditation, he thought that he had reached the peak of the innate realm. His feet that were standing on the edge would be able to cross over that threshold. After all, he saw 2 circles and was actually able to sink deep into them. This meant that there was something inside, however. Only now did Yang Qing realize that the difference between having some comprehension and true enlightenment was like the difference of 1,000 miles. In the end, he still didn't break through that threshold. It was as if there was a glimmer of golden light shining through the crack of the door, but he just didn't have enough strength to open the door. This made Yang Qing extremely uncomfortable. However, no matter how unwilling he was, it was useless. He could only lament that his opportunity hadn't come yet. Yang Qing couldn't be bothered to stay any longer. He planned to get up and go home to take a hot bath and change his clothes first. Right at this moment, Yang Chen's peripheral vision caught sight of a slightly bulging piece of loose soil in the midst of the bushes. That was the nest of the black ants. It looked like an ordinary little mound, but in reality, there were countless small holes in it. The ants usually went in and out to move food. This nest had obviously been there all along. It was just that he didn't notice it when he came here previously. At this moment, because of the heavy rain, a large part of the nest had been washed away. The inside of the nest was also flooded. The ants had no home to enter and were circling around. It was unknown whether they were going to rebuild their home or wait for the weather to clear up and the ground to dry up before making any plans. This was originally a very ordinary scene, but in Yang Cheng's eyes, it was like a spring thunder that exploded in Yang Cheng's mind. Inside the circle, outside the circle, ants, ant nest, Yang Qing murmured. His pair of eyes that were originally calm now sparkled with stars. Chapter 563. After a night of heavy rain, the lush greenery in the courtyard seemed exceptionally cold. Water droplets were dripping from the green leaves and the intricate grass was filled with crystals. The main door of the bungalow was pushed open from the inside. Guoshuahua, who was wearing a light brown sweater, walked out and looked in the direction of the big iron gate. She didn't sleep well last night and her complexion was a little ugly with dark circles under her eyes. However, Guoshuahua couldn't care less. Yang Qing didn't come home for the whole night and no one told her that he was found. Guoshuahua couldn't feel at ease. Mother Wang walked out of the house and sighed tiredly. She said with concern, "Shuahua, I made some porridge. Go and have some. It's cold outside so early in the morning. It's not good to keep standing." "Yulan, where do you think Yang Qing went? There are so many people looking for him in Zhonghai. Why can't they find him?" Guoshuahua was frustrated and didn't have the appetite to eat the porridge. This was her flesh and blood that she had lost for more than 20 years and found again. If she wasn't mentally strong, she would have been bedridden by now. Wang Ma had a bitter expression on her face. "Although I don't have a child, I know that it must be hard for you. But although the son-in-law didn't come back, no one said anything happened to the son-in-law. If the son-in-law came back and you collapsed, the son-in-law wouldn't feel good either. I also know that it's useless to wait like this, but I'm not just feeling bad. My heart is breaking. An indescribable sadness appeared on Guoshuehua's face. Mother Wang smiled wryly and helplessly. What a mess. Why do such troublesome things always happen in our family? However, it's fortunate that Zhenxiu is staying in school these few days. If this happened when she came home, based on the relationship between Zhenxiu and young master, she would probably jump up and down and the family wouldn't have any peace. Guoshuehua was stunned. She frowned and said, By the way, I'm confused. Zhenxiu didn't come back last night. Did she stay at school? Mother Wang nodded and said with heartache, You called me after you left. You said that you're going to do intensive revision or something in school these few days. The entire third year of high school is staying at school. I don't know what the school is doing. They're always doing intensive training. They're all studying, and they're even more tired than working. Guoshuehua forced a smile and said, Of course, students who are going to take the college entrance examination will be more tired. But when they start working in the future, they might really miss these days. Actually, sometimes when I look at Zhenxiu, I often think that if our Yang Qing was also at home and went to school like other children, I would also be like other mothers, urging my child to go to school properly and finish his homework. Thinking about it carefully, those days must have been very meaningful, watching the children grow up day by day and understand more and more. But whether it's Yang Qing or my youngest son, Yang Lai, one disappeared when he was young, and the other went to learn from his master. I couldn't take good care of them. Speaking of which, I'm really not a good mother. I want to use the rest of my time to make it up to them. At least I could see Lai often when he was young, but I couldn't take care of Yang Qing at all. No wonder you treat Zhenxiu like a daughter. It seems that you've never tasted what it's like to take care of a child, so you're using Zhenxiu to make up for it, Mother Wang said jokingly. Guoshuehua smiled faintly, but the worry between her brows didn't dissipate. The two of them looked at the door for a while, but no one came back. They could only turn around and go back into the house. But just as they were about to close the door, someone knocked on the big iron door outside. When Guoshuehua and Mother Wang heard that, they immediately ran out. Indeed, there was a figure standing outside the door, knocking on the iron door from time to time, making bang-bang sounds. With one look, Guoshuehua's eyes turned red, and tears of joy instantly came out. The person who came back was Yang Qing. Son-in-law. Mother Wang was also surprised. She quickly pulled Guoshuehua to the door, and opened the iron door for Yang Qing excitedly. When they got closer to take a closer look, Guoshuehua's tears fell uncontrollably, because the current Yang Qing was really too tragic. His short-sleeved shirt and shorts were full of grass and mud stains. Many parts of his clothes were wet and had not dried yet. His hair was like a bird's nest, and there were some mud stains on his face. His sneakers were also full of mud, and there were even some yellow mud spots on his calves, which should have been caused by the muddy water. It was such a homeless man's attire that made Yang Qing, who wasn't considered a handsome guy, look like he had a mental illness. But he didn't feel anything at all, and he was smiling foolishly at the two elders. He was in an unusually good mood. Mom, Mother Wang, I'm sorry, my phone ran out of battery, and then I ran into something and forgot the time. Please don't be angry at me for the sake of my embarrassment. Yang Qing scratched his bird's nest hair and winked at them. Looking at her son who was smiling without a care in the world, Guoshuehua pouted and hugged him. She cried for a while, then used her fist to hit Yang Qing a few times, seemingly heavily, but actually lightly. She wiped her tears and said, You little rascal, what could make you forget when you get home? You obviously don't care about anyone at home. Do you know that I'm going crazy with worry? Yang Qing allowed Guoshuehua to hit him with her fist. Every time she hit him, he would feel a surge of sweetness in his heart. His lips curled into a smile. The feeling of being missed by his family made him feel guilty, but he enjoyed it at the same time. After Guoshuehua cried for a while, her emotions calmed down, and she didn't feel too sad anymore. Her son had returned home safely, and that was more important than anything else. So she didn't ask Yang Qing anything else, and quickly pulled Yang Qing back to the house. When they were in the house, Guoshuahua looked at Yang Qing's beggar's attire and frowned. Which mountain did you go to and you got lost? How did it become like this? Didn't you drive to the airport? Where did you go? Yang Qing didn't hide it and directly said, I was going to the airport, but something happened, so I went to a wasteland outside the airport and stayed there for a night. Wasteland? Guoshuahua and Mother Wang were puzzled. Why did you go to such a place? Yang Qing thought about it for a while and said, Actually, I don't know what I did. Someone talked to me about something, and I thought about something. After thinking about it, the night passed. In the end, the car broke down, and I had to run back slowly, treating it as my morning exercise. Guoshuahua and Mother Wang didn't know what Yang Qing was talking about, and from the looks of it, he didn't seem to be lying, but they couldn't understand what he was talking about. Young master, why did you run back? Even if you didn't bring any money, you could have taken a taxi, Mother Wang said with heartache. Hearing those words, Yang Qing felt depressed and indignant. Mother Wang, you have no idea. Those taxi drivers thought that I was a beggar, and some even treated me as a lunatic, so they refused to let me in. Only then did the two of them realize that no one dared to drive Yang Qing with his current attire. Even if they weren't afraid of dirtying the car, they were afraid of encountering a fugitive. In the end, Guoshuahua, who was left speechless, did not ask about her son's whereabouts. To her, it was fine as long as Yang Qing was fine. Thus, she nudged Yang Qing and said, Let's not talk about anything else. Go back and take a shower. Change your clothes and come down for breakfast. You must be hungry since you haven't eaten for a long time. Looking at the steaming porridge and side dishes on the table, Yang Qing swallowed his saliva and said, Why don't we eat first? No, how are you going to eat like this? Don't you see that the carpet is covered in mud? Guoshuahua didn't soften just because of Yang Qing's pitiful look. She wouldn't give in to him just because she felt guilty. Furthermore, looking at Yang Qing, he didn't look like he would faint if he didn't eat. Yang Qing scratched his head. It didn't matter to him, so he ran back upstairs. Suddenly, Guoshuahua recalled something and said, Oh right, Yang Qing, did you know that Lu Min was killed? Hearing this, Yang Qing didn't even turn his head. He waved his hand and said, I know. Don't worry about it. They can think whatever they want. Guoshuahua was surprised. Lu Min was someone who made Yang Qing go crazy to kill. She thought that he would have some reaction when he heard that Lu Min was killed. After all, those people must be trying to frame Yang Qing. However, she didn't expect that Yang Qing didn't care at all. Watching Yang Qing go back upstairs, Guoshuahua thought for a while. She frowned and said to Mother Wang, Yulan, why do I feel that Yang Qing is a little different from the others? Mother Wang was puzzled. What's different? Isn't young master always like this? Although he is sloppy, he is still trustworthy when it comes to important matters. Didn't I tell you before that after young master and Miss got married, many problems in our family were solved? It was all thanks to young master. Guoshuahua shook her head and smiled. That's not what I meant. I don't know if I'm being paranoid. I just feel that this kid is a little different. I can't put my finger on it, but I'm sure it's not a bad thing. Mother Wang pursed her lips and smiled. Only a mother like you can feel it. Could it be that this is the so-called mother and son are connected? Knowing that Mother Wang was joking, Guoshuahua rolled her eyes. Just when she was about to say something, she was stunned. Look at my memory. I forgot to tell Yang Qing that Anshin is sleeping in his room. Mother Wang was stunned. She had gone to bed earlier last night. She asked in surprise, Shuahua, you let Miss Anshin sleep in young master's room? Guoshuahua was a little embarrassed. After all, Mother Wang was her daughter-in-law, Lin Ruoshi's family. She nodded. Yes, it was late last night. I couldn't bear to send Anshin out, so I let her sleep in our house. But it's not suitable for her to sleep in Ruoshi's or Jinshio's room, so I let her sleep in Yang Cheng's room. Mother Wang smiled bitterly. She didn't know what to say. It should be fine. Ruoshi is still in Europe. Anshin will go back after she sees Yang Cheng, Guoshuahua added guiltily. But even she felt that it wasn't fair, not to mention that she was facing Mother Wang. In a way, she was Ruoshi's parent. Wang Ma sighed and said, "It's not a matter of one night or several nights. Even if you and I don't say anything, Miss Anne's relationship with the son-in-law is obvious. Shuhua first, it was Miss Chiangwei next door. Now, it's Miss Anshin. I've watched Miss Anshin grow up, and I know her character well. Sometimes, even 10 bulls can't pull her back. If this goes on, what will you do as her mother-in-law?" Guoshuahua's heart was in a mess. She was happy that her son was back, but her son's lifestyle was a big problem. At this moment, the house phone rang. Mother Wang walked over and picked it up. "Who is it?" After a while, Mother Wang's expression became more complicated, and she said with some surprise, "Miss? You're home?